Alrighty, folks, welcome on in to the Central Coast. Mike from PA. We are live and alive, and our thing is on the wrong screen. There we go. That's better. All right, how is everybody doing today? We were in our front for you page of YouTube. How you doing, everybody? No building the flag. Well, what a wonderful, wonderful day. It is election day. In fact, I should have put that in my title. What am I doing? It is election day in Tennessee. It is election day in Pennsylvania. Go elect Chris. Elect Chris. So excited to illegally vote 5 times today. Unfortunately, you won't be able to because voter fraud doesn't exist. Voter fraud doesn't exist. And in fact, I think the fact that Republicans only bring up voter fraud means I kind of think it means they do commit fraud. Like, I'm starting to think that maybe there is like election fraud going on because that's the only thing that works, right? Voter fraud doesn't work. Election fraud works. Georgia votes today also. Good point. Big day. Hassan was worried about Rab last night. What's your analysis? Philadelphia, you know, I'm kind of optimistic. I'll be honest with you. And the reason why is Philadelphia has been voting more left-wing than people expect lately. And I just don't think Sharif Street had enough motion. You know, I don't know if you guys saw the Get Out the Vote rally, but I had way more people in my shitty fucking state representative race than that. And they had the mayor, they had the former congressman, they had Cory Booker. It was really bad. The Hutch stuff last night was so funny. Oh, what Hutch stuff? What happened? I mean, I made fun of him, but I didn't really participate. Oh, and these motherfuckers. I should have posted pictures. These motherfuckers. I should have posted pictures. Hassan is more worried about the demographics of the district. I mean, Chris is a black man, you know? So we'll see. This Hutch person seems very slow. He's extremely slow. The thing about Hutch is I actually want to thank Hutch. I want to thank Hutch because he helped me grow. No, unironically, Hutch helped me grow. He helped me learn that some people are literally less than. I think I had a little bit of ideological blinders, and then I believed that like you could train up anyone. You know what I mean? Like I was probably leaning a little bit too much on the tabula rasa. But some people are just like, due to the luck of, you know, epigenetics, they're just lesser. And our society, and it kind of made me more compassionate in a certain sense. Like, our society shouldn't be about people as smart as like the average person does well. Like, we need to have accommodations in our society that a below average person like Hutch has a dignified life, right? And I felt like with Hutch, so he's helped me kind of step back and realize that some people are just mentally like not equipped, and it doesn't, you know, it is what it is, right? Like he is profoundly stupid. Like I think he may be one of the dumbest people I've ever met, like, and who doesn't have like a brain injury. You know what I mean? Like in fact, I've known people with brain injuries that are significantly more intelligent than Hutch. Like he's gotta be one of the least intelligent people I've ever met. Like, and that is, it's almost humbling in a way. You know what I mean? Like you could look at Hutch, and I don't know, man. I just want to thank him because he's given me so much insight into like mortality and ego and like all those things. Where have you ever seen? I'll give you an example. Have you ever seen someone act in a certain type of way and you're like, wow, that was cringe, and he made you reflect? Because my God, is he stupid. Mike from PA owes me $1,500. So I guess he's saying that I owe him. But what's weird about this is like I posted the receipts. First bet was from DMs. He messaged me, you'd be down to take me up on $1,000 bet that Trump ends up incarcerated after all these trials. And I replied, basically the bet was prison for Trump for 30 days or more before January 21st, 2025. You win $1,000. If not, I win. Basically, we were arguing about whether Donald Trump would be convicted of any of the crimes surrounding January 6th or his businesses. And I said, based on my knowledge of how the legal system works and the political, what's called legal realism, which is the idea that politicians or judges are just politicians in robes. And Donald Trump represents a person with too much political power in the Republican Party to be convicted for the crimes. Like, the Democrats didn't have it in them to go after Trump. So I knew they wouldn't. So in August 1st of 2023, I made a bet with Hutch that he would not be in prison by the swearing in of the next election, which was at that point, like, almost 2 years away, right? And then we made another bet. Now, that's our newer bet. The oldest bet I made on November 7th of 2021. I looked at the first year of Joe Biden, and I realized that he wasn't going to accomplish anything that was going to cause substantial change in America. That he had abandoned Build Back Better. He had abandoned the Democratic Party, campaign promises. That he had passed this very corrupt bipartisan infrastructure bill, and it wasn't going to happen. Right? It just, like, his presidency was toast. I knew it was toast at that point. November 7th of 2021. I knew that he didn't have it in him to be a transformative president, and he was going to be a failure. And I told Hutch that because he was so bad at this, he was going to lose his re-election campaign. So you're saying that judges that let out career criminals who have over 20 to 50 arrests is because of politics? That makes sense. Thank you. No. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the arrests are political. The conditions that create the arrests, the failure of the prison system to rehabilitate, the failure of our society to provide necessary conditions for human flourishing, those are all political questions. So I said, so the bet is if Biden wins the 2024 presidential election, if he does, you get 500. If not, I get 500. And he said, assuming he runs against Trump, yeah. And I said, he's the incumbent. If he's not president in 2025, I win the bet. I'll accept a 500 bet with those terms. November 7th, 2021. So Hutch has tried to say that this bet doesn't work because he didn't run for re-election. Did Biden run for re-election in 2024? Withdrawal of Joe Biden from the 2024 United States presidential election. On July 21st, 2024, the 46th president of the United States announced his withdrawal for the 2024 presidential election. Biden, a Democrat who had been elected president in 2020, stated on April 25th, 2023, that he would run for re-election in 2024 with incumbent Vice President Kamala Harris as his running mate. So, guys, I think he ran for president in 2024. Now, Hutch tries to say that just since he withdrew, he didn't run. But to withdraw from something, you must first attempt it, thereby satisfying it. He ran for president, he lost, and he lost to Trump, which was what Hutch was trying to tell me, that Joe Biden would beat Trump again. And I was trying to tell him it didn't matter who he ran against, he was going to fucking lose. So these are the bets, right? Now, Hutch has not paid me for either one. In fact, he blocked me. Now, it's only $1,500, right? Now, this isn't the only thing, right? What's even funnier about Hutch, and this is why I realized Hutch is kind of a subhuman, like not really a person, is prior to the election, he posted this on November 2nd, 2024. He did a, Kamala Harris saved me from humiliation, Kamala! He said, Kamala winning means the worst people you know will feel like complete shit. MAGA will be caught way off guard because they all think it'll be a Trump landslide. It was. Elon will be forced to confront the fact that he can't simply buy the preferred outcome. And anti-electoral Twitter lefties will feel utterly irrelevant and powerless. Please, people, you have no idea. People, please, you have no idea how much I need this. The most insufferable streamers, cough, Mike from PA, cough, will be forced to acknowledge that Kamala was smart to pivot to the center and aggressively target moderate Republicans. Guys, please. And then he posted tweets where it was about me posting Kamala Harris. And I said, in the tweets that he posted, it turns out Kamala Harris was lying when she said that Biden and Harris were working 24/7 for a ceasefire and hostage deal. Being a leftist is about being right, but too early for people to admit. Obama's surprise of a war with Iran could lose her the election. Now, it turns out that Trump did it. So she didn't do the October surprise. She just lost without debating Iran. I said, it's really amazing how siloed pro-Kamala commentators are from the actual empirical data on polling error. Did I say Obama surprise? October surprise, sorry. So, bro, Come on, man. You were caught in 4K being so completely wrong. Also, I'm not an anti-electoral lefty. I'm famously a electoral lefty. I'm far left on everything, but I think that we should support DSA political campaigns and because I think that advances socialism within America. And the reason why I believe that is because of the data showing the growth of socialist orgs where there is a large leftist or democratic socialist candidate. Who's, you know, like, that's why I believe that. I believe that based on data showing me that the left grows when there's an exciting candidate that's a Demsoc running. So I support the Demsocs running because it helps the left grow in America, makes people more excited about socialism. That is the only, and by the way, I also don't think it's useful for us to tear them down and try to slander them and trash them and make people not like them based on some sort of tactical disagreement. These are my main, like, compromises, right? My compromises are, you know, I've said before many times that I'm a centrist Marxist, which means that I'm ambivalent about reform versus revolution, right? Whatever it gets socialism, I'm in favor of. And I think it depends on the conditions. Sometimes revolution is ready and ripe, and that's the action we should take. And sometimes we have to pursue consciousness building, party building, democratic means in order to build up through the stages of development of a socialist party. We're in stage 1 of socialism in America. Okay, we're barely building consciousness. We're barely building the organs of the left. We're not like stage 4 ready to kick off. This is what I believe. If you could prove these things wrong, then I would be happy to take in the information. But my positions are based on my analysis of the situation and trying to make the decisions that are going to advance the movement now. And it's not tailing. It is an intentional, it's an intentional conscious raising effort. I understand that I am the more advanced, you know, ideologically section of the class. I also understand that I'm no longer necessarily like, I'm not a proletarian. I'm a digital proletarian, whatever the fuck that means. But I am not like in a factory. You know, my economic power is not, I don't have a lot of leverage over the economy. I have social power. No revolution now, no outreach, just do revolution. Well, I mean, funnily enough, like a lot of the ultras speak like revolutionaries and do praxis like what is the word? What is Lenin's word for it? It's like economist, not economists. Fuck, it's economism. Yeah, there you go. They speak like revolutionary ultras, but they do praxis like economisms. If that's even a word. By the way, Hutch is not a liberal. I know I have to say this, but like Hutch is not even a liberal. He doesn't even know what it means. All that Hutch is a Hassan and Micro PA snarker, which means he positions himself against us in favor of whatever faction is against us. He doesn't even really understand liberalism. Because if you were really like in the tradition of American liberals, you would look at FDR and you would look at LBJ and you would be talking about expanding the social safety net in the way and, you know, reconfiguring the economy away from capital and toward labor. You would understand that and you would be tactically aligning with us right now. But he's not even a liberal. You retweeted an account earlier who was calling out an ultra. The ultra said they don't care about organizing. They're just fleeing the country to China. But Assad is still bad, just like ContraPoints. Oh my God. Hutch started his brand as a DGG Destiny Orbiter, and that has positioned against actual leftists. Now he's stuck with that. It is too well, I mean, the thing about Hutch, and I think what he recognizes is he's stupid and he was wrong about everything, but he's cynical. Like what Destiny taught Hutch is to be cynical. That the audience will it's just positioning in social games. So you use the veneer of politics to try to like, I don't know, get some sort of like group of anti-Hassan people that have all sorts of mental illnesses, and maybe you'll make a job off of it. I don't know, man. Not very smart. He's not very smart.
That's kind of what it feels like.
Okay, all right.
If that makes sense.
Makes sense. I just think I mean, listen, is it not kind of comical that he's been given this commentary about like, oh yeah, that's standard issue weaponry. That's usually a surefire sign that things are about to pop off, and he's been doing that for like an hour. And so far, it seems like the police are showing restraint. Like they're not advancing. They issued a dispersal order and they haven't advanced. Oh yeah, no, they use that technology in Colombia. To okay.
He's so unbelievably stupid. It's insane. How does he show his face? How do you show your face?
Okay. Oh, fuck me, right?
Bro, how do you do it? How do you show your face? Fuck you is right. Also, did you notice how the crowd was not violent, was not damaging property, was just standing and conversing and waving flags, and how the police immediately escalated it to violence? There isn't even like a big a traffic jam or anything. There's no pretense. They just wanted to commit violence against protesters.
In and of itself.
You have like little girls with pink backpacks and shit, and they're escalating to violence. Yeah, man, the police really had to take her down, dude. It's hard to appreciate gore tense in which, with armed cops with impunity being on the edge of cracking down, unless you've been there. Video does. I mean, I know what it is. I know what it's like. And here is Hassan physically out of protest, and here is Hutch being sweaty and disgusting and bald, pretending like he knows more when he's never. Has Hutch ever been to a protest in his life? I'm actually kind of curious.
Do you condemn Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no, Hutch?
I do. Yeah, but if he had a D next to his name and he was running for a Texas,
oh my God,
I would probably vote for him. I'm just saying.
That'd be a tough one.
Wild.
Not kidding.
You're just gonna let that one
not a joke. Not a joke.
But, wow.
I think one of the things that's really something that you should consider is the main reason they think Hassan is bad, and this is unironically true, is the main reason we're bad is because of optics. See, when we say that abolish ICE, that's actually bad optics. When we say everybody deserves healthcare and we should forgive student loans and we shouldn't fight wars abroad, that's bad optics. Now, Hutch, close friends with a sex pest who called for the extermination of Black Lives Matter protesters, called trans people subhuman, advised IDF soldiers that when they're committing war crimes not to film them, and who would vote for Jeffrey Epstein. These are the good optics guys, right? According to them, they're the good optics guys. Right-wingers don't deserve healthcare. They do. They deserve intensive mental health treatment. And I would provide it to them mandatorily. Residential mental health treatment, focusing on their fear response and on greed. Those seem to be like the key kind of mental illnesses that right-wingers tend to have. They have this like elevated fear response, and they have an elevated like avarice, like almost self-destructive avarice. We're struggling in Canada. Mike, Carney is a demon. Hey guys, remember when I said Carney was going to be terrible and people got mad at me? You guys remember when I said he was going to be terrible and people got mad at me? Do you guys remember that? When I was like, he's fucking horrible. What are you guys doing in there? And everybody was like, you don't know anything about Canada. Do you have a take on Spencer Pratt calling for mandatory treatment for LA's homeless? What LA needs is a massive expansion of shelter space, and then it needs to have they need to be seizing vacant commercial land and developing housing. But unfortunately, that's too radical. I think LA needs to like quadruple their shelter space. Because like people are usually not homeless because they're mentally ill. They become mentally ill because they don't have shelter. I can tell you right now, if I told you to go live out on the street for a month, you would become mentally ill, or you would be incredibly traumatized. I noticed everyone seems to always say you don't understand the politics of X place instead of arguing why you're wrong on policy. Yes, I know. Like it's Connie Chan. Like I don't like Connie Chan. And honestly, I've still gone soft on her, but I'm not. I'm now ending that by showing you that Connie Chan is actually really bad. Now I was going to stay neutral, but it's time that we stop being neutral on Connie Chan, because people have told me I don't know what I'm talking about. Here is Connie Chan voting to ban all RVs. There's Connie Chan. Yes. Housing and homelessness RV ban. In July 2025, The Board of Supervisors voted to institute Mayor Lurie's RV vehicle ban by a 9-2 vote, with Supervisors Felder and Walton in opposition. The new policy instituted a 2-hour parking limit on oversized vehicles citywide, making existence near impossible for the over 1,400 poor working-class San Franciscans who live in RVs. This ban, which officially took place November 1st, 2025, after a rushed month-long implementation, has been a brutal failure on a number of fronts. While temporary refuge permits were offered to residents who were included in a May 2025 city counts of oversized vehicles, many longtime residents were excluded from this count and struggled to qualify despite multiple appeals. The funding for rehousing and vehicle buybacks was extraordinarily limited and simultaneously pitted unhoused communities against one another by promising RV residents that they'd be prioritized over people sleeping on the street. Gutting a portable housing funding. Connie Chan, yes. 2018, voters approved Prop C, the Our City, Our Home program, which placed a gross receipt tax on the largest businesses to invest in proven housing-first solutions to address homelessness. In July of last year, Mayor Laurie and the moderate supermajority on the Board of Supervisors moved to reallocate tens of millions of dollars away from these permanent housing solutions and toward temporary shelters, hotel vouchers, rental subsidies, and other short-sighted solutions. In other words, they took money that should have went to building housing and gave it as vouchers to the landlord class. Connie Chan, yes. Eliminate affordable housing fees. Connie Chan, yes. Suspend empty homes tax. Connie Chan, yes. Eliminate affordable housing fees for office conversions. Connie Chan, yes. Amending FZP to protect all rent-controlled unit. Board of Supervisors. Okay, she had a good vote there. That was a good vote. So, Connie Chan really doesn't like homeless people and likes sleeps and toes. But again, I've been soft on Connie Chen because I don't know San Francisco. I'm not here to shit on people. And I had been neutral in this race. I'd been like, I don't really like Sakat and I don't really like Connie Chen. So I stayed neutral. Then Connie Chan decided to call Hassan a racist and spread a bunch of establishment lies about Hassan. And then it became clear to me that she was on the side of the establishment. And then what do you know, chat? Yesterday, what ends up happening? What ends up happening, folks? Okay, hold on. San Francisco Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi has endorsed Connie Chan. Wow.
I know and love this district. I know the Congress, and I know Connie. I'm proud to endorse Democrat Connie Chan and ask you to join me in electing her to Congress. Thank you. I know.
Now, I want you to understand something, chat, that Nancy Pelosi hates the left. And she doesn't endorse the left-wing candidate in primaries. It just never happens. So you either have to believe one of two things. One, Nancy Pelosi has suddenly decided she wants to support the Democratic Socialist candidate because she's just the most progressive candidate on offer. Or maybe, and this is the one that I'm asking you to do, maybe Connie Chen isn't actually left-wing. Maybe she will be working against us. And she's already worked to do that by shitting on Hassan when the entire third way and Republican smear machine was going after Assad. She was there to join in. With allies like that, who needs enemies? So when I look at the race, SKYROCKET is by far and away the best candidate. And why do I say that? Because the Democratic Party needs someone who's actually going to push the party left. And SKYROCKET wants to do that. Now, maybe he's made bad decisions. I don't know San Francisco. I'm sure he supported bad candidates and things like that. But I'm going to look at what he's doing now, what he's doing nationally, and he's endorsing all the best candidates around the country. Connie Chen is fucking silent. She's not involved in anyone's race but her own. And she's standing next to Nancy fucking Pelosi. Give me a fucking break, man. So SKYROCKET very clearly is trying to build the institutions to push the Democratic Party left. Connie Chen is playing ball for her own career. If this isn't clear, the choice is SKYROCKET. I don't know what to tell you. SKYROCKET, sorry. I'm stupid. I can't pronounce the name. SKYROCKET. They weren't even planning to primary Pelosi during this wave until SKYROCKET retired. And she retired. And then suddenly Connie wants to run. And, you know, anybody saying SKYROCKET, oh my God, he's rich. He was an engineer. He was an early engineer in Stripe. You don't use Stripe? You've never used Stripe? He made a bunch of money because he was a part of a successful startup. And now he's using that money to push the country to the left. I mean, give me a fucking break here. But he's rich, Mike. But he's rich. That's not a fucking argument. What is he doing in politics? Now, apparently, he went after Dean Preston, who, quite frankly, I'm sorry, San Francisco is run like shit. So I don't really consider anybody who's in the DSA left in San Francisco, I don't really consider any of them to be a sacred cow. Okay, I'm sorry, San Francisco is run like shit. So it is what it is. And it's like, Shoykot and Steyer, they may be rich, and they may have been evil capitalists. Although that's much more true of Steyer than it is of Shoykot. But what are they doing now? And I feel like there is a lack of tactical flexibility that wants you to say no, not based on an argument, but based on some sort of identity appeal. That's how I know it's some liberal CIA bullshit, because there's no rationale, there's no reason behind it. Can you blame this Dean Preston? Dean Preston was on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. He was DSA endorsed, and he was famously kind of anti-YIMBY. He was like he was anti-building housing, basically. Or he wanted to advance, so he was constantly against housing development projects. And so a lot of libertarian type people spent money against him, and he lost. Okay. So, and Shoykot, from what I understand, also didn't supported Dean's challenger. I don't know the context enough, other than to say that was probably, I wouldn't have done that. I'm pretty sure I would not have done that. But that's about it. That's about it. It's not like, and by the way, I considered that to be a big strike against Shoykot. It's why I was slow. It's why I didn't endorse him when Hassan was supporting him. And I was like, there's candidates that Hassan supports that I don't like. Happens all the time. You guys could probably think of a couple right now. Talrico. Exactly. Talrico is working with Liz Smith. Liz Smith is one of the most evil anti-left consultants in the country. John Ossoff, Zionist, fucking right-winger, pro-Israel a guy. I don't like John Ossoff. Hassan likes John Ossoff. I think it's because I'm speculating here because I never asked him, but I'm pretty sure that Hassan worked to help John Ossoff in 2020 behind the scenes. And so there's a little bit of buyer's commitment. When people justify their purchase. Luckily, I'm not like that. I don't believe in justifying I really work hard to avoid the sunk cost fallacy. It's actually what makes me the most weird. I cut bait. I don't hesitate. I cut bait. So it's one of the things that aggravates me the most is that people, the sunk cost fallacy shit it is such a millstone around your neck. It's like he thinks Ossoff is secretly valuable to the left. I mean, Ossoff is at least a talented politician. I'll give him that, but he's not our ally. I'm a factionalist in the Democratic Party. I only want people that are strong left and who are going to fight to make the Democratic Party more left. I don't believe in supporting anyone else because I have a limited ability to help people, right? I do, and in fact, you can see who I've helped on my YouTube channel. You can go to my YouTube and you'll see Mike has a limited capacity. Where is he putting his capacity? I'm pretty sure I have an interview playlist, right? Or do I not? Fuck. Okay, no one is. Wait. Maybe I do. Okay, well, we forgot to add a bunch of these interviews. But I have the Milwaukee Sewer Socialist candidates. I had the Jersey City DSA guys who won. I had I brought the Cuban embassy on, but I also interviewed Francesca Hong. I interviewed Claire Valdez. I interviewed Oliver Larkin. See, here's me loving on Claire. This is what I do, right? I'm supporting Graham Plattner because so obviously that's the right answer. Ryan Clancy is part of the Wisconsin Sewer Socialists. I have Hartzell Gray. I pursue people that I think are actually pushing the country to the left. Obviously I supported Kat Abu-Ghazaleh because she was the most left-wing candidate in the race who had a chance to win. I support Summer Lee, and I have for a long time. I was the person who pushed her to go and hook up with Hassan. You understand that I have done my best and supported and fundraised. I saw Francesca getting motion on Status Quo. Yes, I have, and I will continue to. So I have a limited ability to make, and I've done fundraisers, chat. I just raised $15,000 for Claire, right? There it is. You know, I put in the work trying to find. I think I did a post of all the fundraisers I've done. Maybe I should do it if I haven't already done it. But like, this is the stuff that we're doing here. I think it would be good for Hassan to hear from a Zoran's team, their assessment of how much motion he has. I'm kind of curious himself. He has a lot. So do I. I mean, like, when I bring somebody onto my race, they get like 500 donations. You know how hard it is to get 500 independent new donors? And if Hassan brings, and they get like a couple thousand, that's a huge amount of new donors. We lost the Mauled emoji? What do you mean? It's still there. DSA Mauled. It's right there. You need to teach Hassan to chill. He'll have someone on for an hour, then leave. They leave, then he says, mods leak the dono. Yeah, I actually do need to help him fundraise. Mike, as a graphic designer, have I noticed that a lot of the progressives are using yellow, purple themes in their campaign branding, even back to AOC's first run? Do you have any idea where this trend comes from? It's probably people copying AOC for an intellectual, like, linkage. All right, chat, let's get on to the good stuff, which is China becomes green superpower. Emma destroys McMorrow. Oh my God. We watched that yesterday, chat, and it was so fucking awesome. It was so fucking awesome. Emma Vigeland is becoming so fucking cool. Olivia, yeah, I want to talk about that too, but yeah, I need to work that in there. Are we going to talk about PA elections? Chris winning? Yes, of course.
Away from the Strait of Hormuz,
I should put that in my title,
really
election.
interesting is happening. Countries are changing their energy strategy almost overnight. Decisions that might have once taken years are being made in weeks.
So we're seeing some really interesting dynamics playing out in Asia, in Europe, in North Africa, in a number of places around the world. In Asia, some are calling it the sort of Ukraine moment for Asia. The analogy being that in Europe, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we realized the extent to which European countries were reliant on Russian gas. And in a similar way, Asian countries have suddenly been realizing the extent to which they've been reliant on LNG, on liquefied natural gas imports.
That's Sam Gill, Associate Fellow at Chatham House and Senior Visiting Research Fellow at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. And he's an expert on the geopolitics of energy with a focus on China, and says that country after country is not only pivoting to renewable energy, they are making a run for it.
And a number of countries have been making plans to switch very quickly. The Indonesian president called it a wake-up call for electrification, announced that motorcycles need to switch over to become electric, announced a major new solar pledge. In Vietnam, the largest conglomerate in the country, Ving Group, announced that it is cancelling the country's largest LNG-fired power plant project and replacing it with a renewables project. In the Philippines, in South Korea, they've announced big solar pledges. In Egypt, there's a major new solar project planned. And all of this really just in the past couple of months in response to an obvious need to make our economies resilient. So there's clearly a kind of strong energy security argument, which is about the volatility and variability and entanglements associated with imported fossil fuels. And for the first time, really, it's the same argument as the one that has typically been associated with the climate change argument, which is to say it's a renewable energy argument, or at least it's driving a case for non-fossil fuel sources of energy, including, of course, nuclear as well. In Japan, there's a major conversation also about the need potentially to restart nuclear energy plants as a source of resilient energy. The Prime Minister there has called for Japan to become 100% energy self-sufficient, and for them, nuclear is a big part of that too.
The notable thing is that this no longer seems to be a partisan matter. Remember how political parties would battle over the merits of switching to renewables, the costs, the subsidies, and how fast? Now, with this global energy shock, those ideological battle lines have kind of been set aside as countries around the world realize they don't have good energy security.
So, we're arguably living through, I guess, the third sort of energy shock in some 4 years after COVID and then Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But this one has hit much harder and faster, and actually it's reintroduced sort of an argument around the need for renewables and non-fossil fuel sources as a way to reduce dependency on imported fossil fuels. So it's sort of cut the other way and arguably created a kind of new coalition of actors where people who might previously been skeptical about renewables are now realizing that there's a very strong energy security argument for them, which of course there's always been in some countries, particularly China, which has really seen electrification and renewables as a major part of their mission to mitigate fossil fuel reliance.
Now, China is very interesting. Beijing absolutely needs the Strait of Hormuz to reopen. And yet, as Sam pointed out there, it has also planned for this moment for 2 decades.
China's sometimes been described.
CNN brought Israeli ambassador to U.S. as its expert on the attack in San Diego. He's speaking now. What the fuck? Huh? You're gonna have to link me that.
As a green energy superpower, sometimes there's a description which I might prefer, which is an electrostate. You know, it's a country that is becoming increasingly bound up with the electrification of the economy, as opposed to the import of molecular fuels.
You might call it green energy statecraft. Beijing bet on renewables even as it burned through coal and oil. Chinese policymakers decided renewable energy would be good for the economy and good for national security.
China, relies on fossil fuels for its energy and its growth, and yet it's also probably the most resilient of the major economies. It's highly diversified and highly electrified at this point. They've really invested over the past 2 decades in building out a highly electric and diversified energy system. And a large part of that has always been about mitigating the volatility and the geopolitical entanglements associated with imported fossil fuels. Their concern particularly has been the choke point around the Strait of Malacca, as opposed to the Strait of Hormuz, and the fact that it's patrolled by the US Navy's 7th Fleet. But it's led to very concerted investment in clean energy in particular. And that's really underpinned sort of 20 years now of build out of a really impressive solar, wind, and other renewables, non-fossil energy sources system, leading now to sort of total dominance really of the clean energy supply chain. Some 90% of solar panels are manufactured in China, similar commanding share of wind power, turbines, batteries, electric vehicles, critical mineral processing. Many of the components and elements of the supply chain that are important for the renewable energy transition are based really in long-term, quite patient innovation and industrial policy in China, which has really been about unleashing those technological forces, becoming the leading supplier of the new technologies needed for a carbon-constrained world, and have been really tied up with energy security arguments rather than just being about environmental concern, which has sort of been where, I guess, the association in Europe and the West has been. There's always been a very tight understanding that, or a tight relationship between energy security and climate action in China. And I think that argument is now starting to resonate in other economies.
Remember those countries mentioned earlier? Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Japan? Okay, so they've recognized that it's not great to be overly reliant on oil and gas. But switching to renewables will require buying a lot of renewable energy infrastructure. You know, the actual solar panels, the massive blades for wind farms from one major source, China.
Yeah, I think the bind is particularly difficult for so-called middle powers, countries in Europe, countries in Southeast Asia, who are looking, quite seriously to decarbonize their economies, and they're facing at least 3 challenges at once. One is how to decarbonize rapidly, something their publics want to see, something that they need to see for, in order to mitigate the sort of vulnerabilities and dangers associated with climate change. But they also want to keep costs down in an environment where inflation has also spiked, particularly as a result of the war. And they're concerned about security, they're concerned about dependencies. So how can you balance that?
Why is there ominous music? I don't know.
So-called sort of trilemma is a really difficult ask. And in Europe, for example, people worry about, are we moving from one dependency to another? Are we moving...
guys, I have an idea. Okay, I'm gonna make you dependent on me. Are you guys ready? I'm making you dependent on me. I'm gonna give you a golden goose. And the golden goose, it lives for 25 years, okay? 25 years from now, the golden goose will reduce the amount of eggs it lays by 10%. So it'll still, 25 years from now, it'll still be laying golden eggs, but 10% less than it is now. Maybe 20% less, but it's a golden goose, okay? Are you dependent on me? That's the logic of the, oh, we're moving from dependency on oil to dependency on Chinese solar panels. See, the energy from oil comes from the oil. The energy from solar panels comes from the sun, you dumb fuck. What they're basically saying is the solar panels are going to be so awesome, we're going to want to buy more. That's the dependency that he's talking about.
Away from, dependency on Middle Eastern oil, much as, we also had one on, at least in parts of Europe, on Russian gas, towards a dependency on Chinese supplied sort of components for a renewable energy system. And at the same time, of course, the US is a wild card. It also, to a greater or lesser extent, is sort of forcing the hand of countries that are sort of caught in the middle in supply chains. So it's a really difficult bind for countries, and it means that geopolitics is completely bound up with those clean energy choices.
Countries face few good options, but Sam makes the point that at least with renewables, once you build out the infrastructure, which again will depend on buying from China, but once you do, in the medium and long term, you will be in better shape.
But I will say that there is a difference between fossil fuel energy imports and renewable energy systems, insofar as you can't actually blockade the sun, you can't blockade the wind. There's a difference in, once you build out these systems, they do provide greater resilience from the kind of entanglements and volatility associated with imported fossil fuels.
What's special about this moment is that we may be at an inflection point. Adopting renewables has been a constant policy fight, but this time, because of this war, the pivot away from oil and gas might be real. And if that's the case, there's no going back.
I think any energy shock actually helps to create the argument for the alternatives, and previous energy shocks have done the same. What's different about this one is not only that it's happened so fast and in such a sort of hard and unpredictable fashion, but also actually that the alternatives are really there, they're mature.
See, the problem is the alternatives would result in America losing its supremacy, right? In geopolitics, we talk about absolute power and relative power, right? This is an important idea in geopolitics that I'm about to explain, so open your fucking ears. So there's relative power and there's absolute power, right? The Roman Empire was the most dominant relative power of the ancient world, meaning it was capable of exercising its will and destroy almost any power that might challenge it. Okay, it had a lot of relative power, so that means millions of human beings lived under the power of the Roman Empire. But if you took the technology of the Roman Empire and you brought it to today, they would lose to a municipal police department. Okay, they're not actually that powerful in their technology. It's just they had the highest relative power. And this is what's happening in the world today. America is the most dominant superpower because of the relative power of their economy and their military. China is rising, not by destroying the United States, but by just developing new technology and by raising the standard of living in the and growing the economy of China. So relative to China, the US is a lot less powerful. Their absolute power of the United States has not changed, but the relative power of the United States is in decline. And to the United States, they'd rather 1.5 billion people live in poverty forever than give up their prime place as the most powerful country. So all this shit, everything but that, like if you're not dealing with that reality, then you're being lied to. You've been tricked. The United States of America wants to maintain relative dominance over all the other power centers or possible power centers in the world. It's why they divide the Middle East with all those dictatorships, both monarchies and military dictatorships. It's why they're constantly intervening and invading in Latin America. It's why they're constantly intervening and invading in Africa. It's because they don't want an African Union. They don't want a Latin American Union. They don't want a pan-Arab nationalism. Because if Africa united, if Latin America united and formed an EU-style, federation, that would challenge America. That would challenge Europe, and our relative power would be diminished. Our ability to engage in unequal exchange would be destroyed. Now, it would make all humanity better off, because billions of people that right now live in abject poverty and in sweatshops and in subsistence farm fields, they would be able to approach their full potential. Billions of new minds could develop to their full potential, and that would raise the standard of living of all of us, right? But that can't happen because the capitalist class in America would be relatively less powerful. They wouldn't be able to dominate and exploit. And so that's what all of this shit is really about. That's why they hate renewables so much, because renewables they don't do well to concentrate capital. Actually, renewables are a democratizing force in our economy. You just need a stretch of sky to collect sun from. You don't have to buy oil every day and import it in and then burn it in a giant fucking power plant. The fossil fuel industry necessitates large capital accumulations, whereas renewable energy allows even individuals to power themselves at an economical level. That is a fundamental attack on capitalism itself. Renewable energy is socialist. The essence of renewable energy is democratizing. It is socialist. I could have a few panels, I put it on my roof, and now I power myself. What used to take massive capital accumulations and the work and the blood, sweat, and tears of millions of people in order for me to be able to purchase a fleeting amount of electrons, versus now I own a panel that provides me all the electrons I need for the rest of my life. They fucking hate that shit. Of course they hate it. It's taking powers out of the hands of capitalists and democratizing our world.
Renewable energy systems are coming in at a cost that means they can be installed and at scale, and the technology exists, and there's of course willing suppliers and mature industries that can do so. So it kind of feels different as a result. And I think as a result, yes, there might be some immediate snapback as fossil fuel prices fall again, as they will. But then I think the costs of renewables will continue to fall, as they have consistently over the past decade or so. And we'll see the increasing adoption of electric vehicles, again, because the argument is sort of being won on its own terms. The technologies are coming in at a price point that works for consumers, that work for governments, and they also have the added security benefits of increasing the resilience of our economies in a context of greater tensions and a need to extricate ourselves from some of the dependencies associated with imported oil.
So what do you think? Are we seeing a real moment when the world finally fully goes for renewables? And how do you feel about China as the world's electro-state superpower? Let us know in the comments. That's all for now. DW News is giving you the latest and also sharing deep dives on here and across the rest of social media. I'm Melissa Chan. Until next time.
If you drove past a gas station recently, you saw it. If you stopped at one, you felt it. Gas prices just had their biggest one-month spike ever. The war in Iran has already cost the average American household $184. That's real money, really gone. And that's just the start. The International Energy Agency is calling this the most severe oil supply shock in history. About 1/5 of the world's oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Oil still makes up roughly 80% of global energy. You don't need to be an economist to do the math. But here's the part that stopped me in my tracks. Even if the strait reopened tomorrow, it would take years for the production to get back to pre-war levels. Years. I built my home with solar, storage, and an EV, partially so I'd be self-sufficient during winter outages. I wasn't planning for a war in the Middle East, but that's the strange thing about this moment. A climate story just became a security story, and a security story just became a personal one. So here's the flip side. Last year, solar added more new power generation than any single technology in a single year ever. That's the IEA, not me. So here's what I wanted to figure out. Is this war actually speeding up the energy transition? Or is it just exposing cracks that were already there? Because the answer isn't simple, and it's not the same everywhere. I'm Matt Farrell. Welcome to Undecided. This video is brought to you by Surfshark. Let me say something obvious up front. This war is a human and economic catastrophe first. Everything else flows from that. The US and Israel started it in late February. Iran responded by taking control of the Strait of Hormuz, and ship traffic basically stopped. Both sides have hammered energy infrastructure across the region. And if you've been following the news, you've heard the same loop. The strait opens, it closes, it opens again. But that tit for tat misses the point. Even if traffic resumed tomorrow for good, the damage is already baked in. But here's what makes this moment different from past oil shocks. Clean energy isn't just the climate choice anymore, it's winning on cost. In a lot of places, a new solar farm is already cheaper than running an old gas plant. So on paper, a war that pulls 20% of the world's oil offline should be rocket fuel for the transition. Except the oil companies that aren't near the strait are about to have the best quarter of their lives. Both of those things are true at the same time, and the story of how they collide is already playing out, country by country. There's another piece of big and obvious news here. The war in Iran is pushing the energy transition forward in many places. We know this because country after country is responding to this crisis by accelerating their adoption of renewable energy. I'll admit it, when I first heard the war is accelerating the energy transition, my gut said, sure, but for who? I'm sitting in a house in New England with solar and a battery. I'm not in Spain, I'm not in South Korea, but it turns out this isn't just a headline about faraway capitals. It's a pattern, and it's happening at every level. So let me show you what I mean. In Europe, France is ramping up its electrification plans and might even fund it with taxes on fossil fuel companies. The UK has a plan to decarbonize housing with heat pumps and solar. Spain is the shining example of using renewables to avoid the worst of the energy shock. The country's government has touted their massive green energy investments as a reason that the country has been shielded by the worst of the price hikes. And there's something to it. We see similar moves in Egypt and India, which are adding gigawatts of renewable storage and production. And we see it in Southeast Asia, the area that's most reliant on oil from the strait. Then there's Japan, which is speeding up adoption of wind and returning to nuclear, overcoming very reasonable concerns following the Fukushima disaster. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung laid it out clearly. Our future will be at serious risk if we continue to rely on fossil fuels.
And this is the first time that South Korea has had like a center-left president in fucking forever.
The writing is on the wall for countries around the world, and in Korean, Hindi, and the Queen's English, it reads, renewables now. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz turns renewable energy from a consumer or climate issue into a security issue. As we'll see later, it's not the guaranteed win for renewable energy and the climate as it might seem. So in both the near and long term, countries are pushing renewables. But that's not the only evidence we have. We also have some early data. An analysis by the Center for Research in Energy and Clean Air found fossil fuel use decreased the first month of the war, and that renewables made up the difference. This is just 1 month, but it's surprising and hopeful given the expectation countries would replace their lost gas with whatever they had around, including coal, the dirtiest, most carbon-packed energy available. So yes, countries are and will be adding renewable energy in response to the crisis. And it's not a foregone conclusion that they'll turn back to the black brick rather than renewable stack to make up the immediate energy shortfalls. But as we all know, countries are slow. Utilities are also slow. Policy takes time, and Spain needed a half a decade of renewable investment to be able to respond well to this crisis. But what about consumers? The regular people buying cars and solar panels and heat pumps? The people like you watching this video right now? How are you responding? Before we get into your response, the energy crisis isn't the only risk worth planning ahead for. In the past few months, I've attended a few conferences, and between hotel and conference Wi-Fi, I leaned heavily on today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN, to keep my browsing secure for supporting the channel. So back to how you're responding, starting with what you drive. Let's start with EVs. The case for buying an electric vehicle right now seems pretty simple. The price of oil
I love the
is
stock market just ignoring Trump right now. Is it? I don't think it is, man. I think people are starting to get concerned. The Mike was right era is starting again. Oil is back. Remember? Hey, chat, look at that. Oil's back to where they've got to leak another peace treaty. It's at 110 again. They're about to have another peace treaty. But here's the thing that's slowly happening, chat. The bond yields. The bond yields are now reaching America's credit is starting to be significantly affected by Trump. We have the highest 30-year bond yield going back for how many years? Wow. 2004. Bro, I got student loans with higher rates than this, or lower rates than this. Huh. Maybe I should, instead of like paying off my loans, make the minimum payment and buy treasuries instead. The money. Mike, I'm dumb. What does green number mean? Green number means interest rates are going up. So the cost to buy a house, a car, or use a credit card is going up. Green is bad if you have debt. Well, it depends on what kind of debt you have. Check the link. He just said this. He's gonna strike like you predicted. I don't know. Trump says U.S. may need to hit Iran again. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday the United States may need to hit Iran again. He was only an hour away from deciding on a strike before he postponed the attack. I was an hour away from making the decision to go today. Trump said Iran's leaders, they're begging to make a deal, but a new U.S. attack would happen in the coming days if a deal is not reached. Well, I mean, I'm saying 2 or 3 days, maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday or something, but early next week, a limited period of time, because we can't let them have a new nuclear weapon. I thought you destroyed all the shit. Use a money market treasury fund as a savings. That's why it's accessible, but you get treasury yields. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, the thing is, though, if you own the treasuries and bonds, if the rates decline, then you get a principal appreciation upside, right? If you think rates are going to go up from here, then you would use the fund. If you think the rates are going to go down from here, buying the treasuries would be better. I did that myself for 35 years ago, and now I'm paying off my eldest daughter's NYU student loan balance. Congratulations on your daughter going to NYU, but the job market is fucking terrible. So hopefully she's networking her ass off. In my country, despite we have tons of solar and wind farms, and there is nearly zero change in price. If it has only increased because of the stupid system we have, the total price is calculated with the price of the highest energy type cost. That's usually oil or gas. So only the billionaires that own the solar and wind farms are gaining a lot. Don't be like my country. Well, that's called capitalism, right? Like if you allow things to be held in private hands, they're going to gouge you. That's why everything needs to be owned in common, like the Swiss do. The Swiss own their electrical grid as a state-owned enterprise, and they don't have to pay increased energy rates. Their costs are based on their costs.
Off. And not to get too technical here, but you need oil to fuel an internal combustion engine. I'm nearly certain of it. If gas guzzlers are more expensive, demand for EVs should go up. And it definitely has, but just how much, it depends on how EV markets are structured. So let's look at the US and the EU, the second and third largest car markets on the planet. In the EU, the new EV sales market jumped up over 50% in March. That's over 240,000 new EVs in a single month. In that same month, the number of new US EVs sold was down from nearly 25% from March last year. So how is that possible? The weirdness light is flashing on the dashboard, so let's pull over and check under the hood. While America is a significantly larger overall market, America sold around 87,000 EVs in March, which is a fraction of what the EU sold. And that's just bad. But there were some reasons for hope. While demand for new EVs was down from the previous year, demand for used EVs was up nearly 28% year over year. So think about that. Even the greatest energy shock in history couldn't get Americans to buy more new electric cars. I keep thinking about this from the driveway. I drive an EV. Every time gas jumps $1, my neighbor with the pickup is hurting, and I'm, well, not. That's not a brag. It's the whole argument. An EV is a hedge against exactly this kind of week. So why in the biggest oil shock of our lives aren't Americans making the switch? Why is America doing such a bad job turning EV demand into EV sales? It comes down to a toxic mix of policy and preference. First, let's explain those weird sales numbers. The Trump administration removed EV incentives last year, cutting the $7,500 credit for new EVs and the $4,000 credit for used ones. This is a real killer for demand. People who had leased EVs under these credits also ended up turning their cars in, creating a glut of used, quickly depreciating EVs that are now cost competitive with gas cars. On top of that, the US auto industry, seeing the way that the White House wind was blowing, responded by cutting back on EVs, writing off tens of billions of dollars in EV investment. American EVs are more expensive.
By the way, American EVs suck because American companies suck. And America can't manufacture for shit because they are propped up by subsidies. They don't have competition. They are rentiers. They profit from externalizing externalities, the cost of those. They can't compete. They don't invest in R&D. They don't invest in improving their production. They're dog shit companies, and everybody knows it.
Expensive than European ones. And it's not just tax incentives. America hasn't allowed the entry of lower-cost Chinese competitors like BYD, which would push American makers to build cheaper, better EVs or get out of the business. And the American consumer preference for big honkin' trucks, which require big honkin' batteries, has also weighed down the electric vehicle costs here in the US. So even in a massive energy crisis, the potential for EV demand to take off depends on how the domestic market is structured. It's not just supply and demand, it's supply and demand and tax rebates and foreign competition and business investment and consumer preference. It's really complex. But is this story an EV thing? Or does it apply more generally? It turns out that even the greatest energy shock in history won't immediately speed up adoption of every green tech. The war in Iran makes the case for solar panels stronger than ever. After all, you can maybe block the Strait of Hormuz with a naval blockade, but there's no armada strong enough to block the sun. Yet. It's true that American solar manufacturing is ramping up, but for now, global solar capacity is largely a story about China. The country produces a huge amount of solar, more than twice the global demand in 2025, and that oversupply is a problem for the industry. Right now, there's pessimism among Chinese solar executives. But wait, how can overcapacity be a problem? A great Reuters article breaks it down. First off, with too much capacity, a huge amount of these companies are set to go bust. In order to get a handle on these things before this economic sun blister bursts, China just removed export tax rebates to solar producers. Chinese solar producers tried to get rid of everything they could before these rebates ended in April. One solar exec says this means the industry is currently in the off-season. I didn't know the sun had an off-season besides, like, the night. This isn't just about reduced incentives for producers, it's about the consumer side. The solar demand picture is not as sunny as you'd expect. Meanwhile, my solar panels on the roof don't care about export rebates or Chinese overcapacity. They just keep making power. But for the millions of people who haven't installed yet or just can't, all this market weirdness does matter. And with energy prices spiking, it can matter a lot.
And the thing about whenever people talk about the payback period of solar panels, they never really talk about the risks of a black swan event like we're having now, right? Which is the prices grow much faster than inflation. So even with the overpriced American panels, they do everything they can to keep you from getting solar. It still pays itself back in half a decade.
Here's the part that surprised me. Around 70% of all solar installations in 2025 went to 3 markets: the US, China, and the EU. But none of these markets are primed to add much this year. The US market is largely off limits due to tariffs and other restrictions. In China, demand is down after the removal of domestic subsidies. And in the EU, natural gas prices aren't rising high enough like they did during the opening of the Ukraine war in 2022 in order to push people.
That's actually not even true. They did remove some subsidies, but they're still growing at an unprecedented rate. China shipped a record 68 gigawatts of solar in March. So as prices have gone up, the necessity for solar, look at this chart. New data analyzed by Ember shows China exported 68 gigawatts of solar in March alone, double February's total and 49% higher than the previous record set in August 2025. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equal to Spain's entire installed solar capacity. It's not just solar. China's exports of batteries and EVs are also surging as countries try to reduce their reliance on fossil fuels. So, like, a lot of the Chinese development is happening because of economic growth.
To make the solar switch. According to one analyst, the Iran war will only have a marginally positive impact on global solar demand. For a sunny industry, that's a dark forecast, or at least a cloudy one. So clean tech demand doesn't guarantee clean tech adoption with EVs. In the case of solar panels, there might not be all that much new demand, at least in the near term. It's worth returning to the big picture here, because beyond government plans or consumer markets, the war in Iran has cemented a whole new paradigm that should, in theory, promote the energy transition. But does it? All these countrywide plans to speed clean energy adoption are based around the same idea: security. But energy security is not the same as climate policy. It's about shielding from immediate impacts, not protecting against long-term repercussions. Energy security might require a country to return to coal in the short term rather than have their population go without power. And just because coal use hasn't gone up yet this year, it doesn't mean it can't, especially if the war drags on and the strait remains closed, which it very well could. Temporary price ceilings or tax holidays for fossil fuels will help consumers during this crisis, but they also contribute to emissions and keep people from switching to EVs. Or think about energy security in the context of America, the biggest producer and exporter of fossil fuels on the planet, which does so in the name of energy independence and security. US oil companies right now are making record profits, and that's helping them spend billions more to find even more oil and keep us trapped in our fossil fuel economy. People argue that this focus on fossil fuel supremacy will somehow protect us from the rising oil prices, but it doesn't. Even if the US market is much less exposed to this energy shock than a country like the Philippines, it doesn't matter much because the price of oil is set on the international market. Our prices still go up. This is the part that frustrates me the most as a homeowner who went through the trouble of doing the right thing. The fossil fuel industry gets to keep cashing in. Drivers get short-term relief at the pump. And the long-term project, the one that would actually protect people from the next shock, slows down. Energy security and climate policy sound like the same thing, but they're not. War is horrific. There's something disappointing and sad about a war with all the death and destruction it entails being the catalyst for the energy transition. It would be great to see more of this transition come from the proactive work of companies and states. And
well, the only state that's actually doing that proactive, well, there's a couple. I mean, Spain did as well, right? But China is the only country that's proactively doing it. And the United States is actively working against it. In fact, the wind farm company that the United States is paying millions and millions of dollars to not build wind farms is also being bribed not to build wind farms in Europe. There's $1 billion of wind leases that are not in Europe that are not going to be used because the Trump administration put pressure on that European wind farm company not to build it.
Not just a reaction to a conflict. But here's what gives me hope. I'm not planning for an energy crisis. I've been quietly building for one for years, and so have millions of other regular people. From that vantage point, this crisis doesn't just push policy, it pushes neighbors. A friend asks about your solar panels. A coworker asks why your gas bill didn't move. That's how a transition actually spreads. The crisis shows that change at the highest level is possible, and change at the human level is guaranteed. Energy systems and government policy will take months and years to respond to this crisis. In the meantime, regular people can lead the way. But what do you think? Do you think this crisis is actually speeding up the transition, or is it just exposing how fragile the old system always was? Jump into the comments and let me know. You can also check out extended cuts of our videos over on Patreon. If human-written and research videos matter to you, Patreon support helps a ton. The link's in the description if you'd like to join, but just watching, subscribing, and turning on notifications is awesome. And check out my podcast, Still to be Determined, where we've been interviewing a lot of interesting people like Carl Rabago on where the future of the grid is heading. Keep your mind open.
All right, so chat, we've got a new candidate that we've got to struggle extra hard against. I really want Connie Chen to be knocked out. Right now in our, listen, if you're from San Francisco, I need you to get a grip. Connie is your enemy. And either you understand that and you trust me, think about all the examples that I've been right on over all of the years. And you think that I'm wrong about this one because you know Connie. And in front of your eyes, I need you to understand that Nancy Pelosi has been our enemy for the better part of a decade. She is not endorsing in a primary for somebody who's actually going to be good. Okay? Connie Chen play acting as left wing. Connie Chan, excuse me. Play acting as left while being a San Francisco local supervisor is not the same thing as actually being on the left in Washington, D.C. Like, this is what you need to understand. Okay? This is what you need to get. Nancy Pelosi does not put herself into this race to support someone who's going to make a difference in D.C. She puts herself in this race because she understands that Connie has been bought. And I know that can be rough to hear. I know it can be rough to have to accept that a friend of yours is bought, okay? But they are, all right? And I'm outside, so I'm neutral. I don't have a dog in this fight. Until when Third Way was launching those attacks on Hassan, Connie chimed in to say that Hassan is an anti-Asian racist. And that was an attack being promoted by the RNC at the time. Do you think that a politician for Congress just randomly joins into an RNC attack? Do you think that that's like a oopsie-doopsie daisy, I just didn't realize situation? You want to figure out if somebody's fake? This is how you figure it out. And I've got, you know, I have my reservations about SKYROCKET, but when I look at what he wants to do nationally, the reason why Nancy Pelosi's fighting him is because when he was AOC's chief of staff, he got her to protest for the Green New Deal in Nancy Pelosi's office. He was putting pressure on the national Democratic establishment. That is what Connie is fighting against. She is part of the Democratic Party machine. I don't care what you think she is. And I need you to like get your shit together. I really do. And by the way, if you don't like it, frankly, I'd rather you leave, because I don't need people like you in my community. I honest to God don't. Like I don't. Like, if you don't get it, if you're not on board with the fact that there is a war going on, a factional war going on, and Connie Chan is on the side of Nancy Pelosi, she's on the side of Chuck Schumer, she's on the side of Andrew Cuomo. That's the reality. If you don't get it, then you're useless to me. She's also endorsed by Adam Schiff, and that's just the reality. That is the fucking reality. I need you to get your shit together, guys. I really do. It's the same way a lot of you were supporting Mallory McMorrow or whatever the fuck. Get your shit together. I need you to stop. Let me show you the other thing I wanted to show you. Nancy Pelosi. And if in case you're wondering why this is because boycott represents an actual threat. Democratic Majority for Israel founding member Sam Lauder with positive words on Connie Chan and Scott Wiener. Wiener has a very strong base of frequent voters in the LGBTQ community and the YIMBY community, and with the majority of moderate by San Francisco standards, voters of the city, said Sam Lauder, a political strategist with BMWL Public Affairs and a Democratic activist who sits on the board of the Democratic Majority for Israel. Connie Chan has a passionate base within the politically engaged progressive community. The unions, for example, he added, that he expects Chan to have a considerable support from the Chinese American community. Chakrabarty's support seems to have coming from people who haven't to date frequently turned out to vote. Progressives who aren't in tune with the established progressive community, he said. Having said that, he certainly has increased his name recognition significantly with his personal spending. I think he has a very good shot of being in the final two of established progressive community in San Francisco, aka sellouts and frauds and failures. New poll shows Daniel Laurie is the most popular American mayor. 74% of San Francisco voters approve of him. Majority support his handling of public safety, downtown revitalization, neighborhood cleanliness. I mean, San Francisco is so poorly run that literally any effort whatsoever to be competent is going to be super, super popular. I don't want to run too much for the topic, but I would, even though Portugal and Spain bet so high on renewables, our electricity bill is still one of the most expensive. Do you happen to know why? I mean, it still requires, you're not 100% renewable. You're not 100% renewable. You are still requiring, energy transfers from fossil fuels. I think you rely on, I think Spain's energy mix includes a lot of gas in it. If you look at the total energy mix, it's 44% oil products, 21% natural gas. Bro, San Franos love their weak junior coalition left. They like the left that is kissing Nancy Pelosi's feet. And there are a lot of people in the kind of like progressive industrial complex that are very comfortable being the junior partner in the Democratic Party, right? Who like to stand in the back of the bus, right? And that's Connie Chan, right? Like that's her in a nutshell. Her in a nutshell is, yes, Adam Schiff and DMFI and Nancy Pelosi, we do love you. I will vote to sweep the homeless. And people go, Mike, you just don't understand. You don't understand the local San Francisco left. All I know is you have the reputation of being some left-wing city, but honest to God, you are one of the most neoliberal cities. So I think we need somebody with a different perspective on national politics to join in. And DSA San Francisco didn't even endorse Connie. Like, that's the other thing. It's like, oh man, listen, the Dean situation, boycott, I don't agree with that. I 100% don't agree with that. But that being said, like, I think he's proved himself to be a thorn in the side of the National Democratic Party and pushing the party far to the left. And the way he's run his campaign as a national wave campaign of the progressive left with an amazing platform. I care about that. I don't care about the fact that he trod on somebody's toes 5 years ago. I care about the policy platform and who's standing behind him now. And again, I was happy to remain neutral until Connie decided to dip her toes into the race by raising her voice to promote an RNC attack on Hassan. And, is this personal? Yes, it's partially personal. It's partially personal because I'm here and Hassan are here organizing for the left every fucking day, getting death threats raising money out of my own pocket. I don't do, I am not saying that I'm a martyr here. But if I have a Democratic establishment politicians like Connie that are eager to plant daggers in our backs, promoting lies from the RNC, I know they're going to be an enemy for the long run. Fuck you. And I want people to suffer who do that kind of shit. You're going to promote a MAGA Vietnamese refugee who is saying how much she loves Trump and she wants to deport all other refugees, and you're going to call Hassan racist for calling that out? That's fucking insane. And that tells me exactly what you are. She knew who Hassan was. It's not like she's confused about it. Hassan represents the young left in America. And she wanted to stick a dagger in his back for Nancy Pelosi, for Adam Schiff. It's really not complicated. And if that doesn't affect you, if you could show up to my stream and Hassan's stream every day and not understand that, I don't want you here. I really don't. I think it would be better if you were gone. I don't need people that are perfectly fine with someone they watch for thousands of hours a year get fucking their reputation dragged through the mud by lies from the Republicans and then just shrug it off. That's not okay with me. Fuck you. And it's not like Connie is some sort of principled leftist or something. She loves voting for those homeless sweeps. She was practically grinning ear to ear when she voted to get rid of all the RVs in San Francisco, which is why DSA doesn't endorse her. She loves stealing money that could have gone to social and public housing and giving it out to landlords for vouchers, neoliberal program, gutting the desire to supply actual housing supply and taking that money and diverting it towards hotels stays, overpriced hotel stays, ineffective housing vouchers. How many decades of housing voucher policy do we need before we realize it doesn't work? So yeah, I was neutral. Now I'm not. And in fact, if you want to get personal about it, I'll get personal about it. Now that she has Nancy Pelosi's endorsement, that should make it clear to all to the left that she's the enemy. Like, the other thing that's funny is like people be like, oh, Nancy Pelosi endorsed Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is an elected rep who is in a safe blue seat and is clearly going to win. Nancy Pelosi wanted to protect herself from a left-wing challenger. But you know what she did do? She went down to Texas and she fought against Jessica Cisneros. I misspelled her name. She went to Henry Cuellar and gave him a boost right before he was indicted by the FBI for corruption. This is who she likes to endorse. Henry Cuellar is the most right-wing Democrat in the entire country. He votes with the left 10% of the time. The most right-wing Democrat in the country. She fought tooth and nail to defend. But no, guys, she really loves progressivism. She's endorsing Connie because Connie's the progressive choice. I think if you support Connie, then you are actually more harmful. And I have a personal investment in defeating Connie for any office she runs for the rest of my life. I just don't want her to lose. I want her out of power. Ryan is also lying about the San Francisco DSA here. I mean, the people that are arguing for Connie are all the worst, dumbest ultras online. The people who want to who want you to excommunicate AOC or Graham Plattner are defending homeless encampment sweeps. Thank you, Mike, for correcting the record. Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to take the wind out of the sails of every single person who tries to promote Connie Chan by slamming this homeless encampment sweep votes and this affordable housing gutting right in their fucking face. I'm going to stuff it down the front of their shirt. Now, I was going to be quiet about this race, but, people decided that they wanted my attention by smearing us as racists. Ryan is being stupid lately? I don't think he's being stupid. What are you talking about? I will never vote for AOC, but I love Connie Chan. Yeah, that's hilarious. AOC, yeah, Nancy Pelosi is endorsing Connie because she's definitely going to be on the left. Here's something people don't understand, and I'm going to explain it to you. A lot of people pretend to be left-wing when they're in a deep blue district, and then when they get national power, they fucking help the establishment, which is destroying the left. Connie is very clearly one of those types of people who they all know is playing the game and is a careerist. That's how I feel also, quite frankly, a little bit. I'm very suspicious that Nithya is that same type of person who uses the left to get attention and advantage and power and then discards them because they're not ideologically actually left-wing. It happens all the time. I feel like a lot of the folks on the left who are anti-Psychot folks, who are off of the anti-AOC folks, are increasingly Zoran critical, should like wonder how they found themselves so far left that they consistently agree with the left's ideological enemies within both the Dem and GOP parties. Yes, because they're stupid and they got owned by the algorithm. He's right. Nithya sucks shit, but the alternative is Carrot Ass or Spencer Pat. I'm voting Ray. I'm voting Ray. I'm not voting Nithya. If Nithya makes it through, then I'll reconsider. I think that like the fact that Nithya has made no attempt to have a relationship with Hassan tells me everything I need to know. And when she went on the fucking and she was honestly not a very good politician. Like I've been pretty quiet about Nithya up until this point, but the reason why I'm changing my mind is it's like you could have like called Hassan and just been like, all right, let's give me a rundown of, you know, I'm bringing, you know, talk to them like a person and like try to understand the audience. And instead, you know, but she doesn't want to explain her positions because she's donor captured. And so she looks stupid because she's not actually going by a left-wing perspective. So she has to do this kind of like jittering, confused explanation because it doesn't make sense even in her own mind. I mean, failing an open book test. I've never seen a person fail an open book test. It happens all the time. Like, can we talk about how DSA California got shit for suggesting to vote Tom Steyer? Yes, because a lot of people in the online left are moralists, not political tacticians. So they think that Steyer is rich, therefore he's bad, right? Like that's the argument they're making. And they don't see politicians as like enacting policy because they've fallen into the American brainworm, which is that politics is about pissing off your enemies, not actually exercising power. So Tom Steyer is a rich guy, so they want rich guys to feel bad about themselves. So they don't give a shit about the actual policies that are being advanced, right? So, and that's the same way people that talk about Graham Plattner, they're exactly the same way. They want somebody who they don't like, who's a veteran, basically. He's an Iraq War and Afghanistan War veteran, and they want Iraq War and Afghanistan veterans to feel bad. So they're going to oppose Graham Plattner to make veterans feel bad. That's literally all it is. He's morally bad because he's a veteran, therefore he should lose. Steyer is morally bad because he's a billionaire, therefore he should lose. That's not what politics is about. Politics is about policy. If they have a good policy and they're campaigning on it and they're going to accomplish it, that's what we should be focused on. Now, obviously, I would love to have an angel who's also got a perfect biography as well as great policies. But when you're talking about what politicians do, they push buttons and pull levers. And that results in outcomes in your life. I want to vote for the people that are going to push the buttons and pull the levers that I want pushed and pulled. I'm not going to vote for someone who has a slightly nicer biography, but does everything I don't want to see. It's really not that complicated. I mean, maybe they don't trust a rich guy to betray his class interest. He's already done that. First of all, again, you don't, how do I say this? Mechanistic materialism is not Marxism. I know you guys think that you're doing leftist shit, but it's very clear that you haven't read even a little bit of Marx when you say shit like that to me. And it pisses me off and it makes me go into a bad mood because you don't even really understand Marx. Marx does not say that capitalists have an interest, therefore everybody who's rich will act in this way. That's mechanism. That's not the way it works. Ideas have power. People operate against their interest all the time. And for our movement to succeed, we need rich people that have been convinced from social reasons, from intellectual reasons, for God knows why, to act against their class interest. That is going to happen. In fact, this is a necessity. And saying that it can't happen is just wrong because Engels himself is an example of that. Marx's patron. The reason why you know who Marx is because his lifestyle was subsidized by a rich guy so he could write his fucking books. And the fact that you don't understand that and the fact that you deny its possibility is foolishness of the highest degree. And every single revolutionary movement, every socialist movement has included rich people, has included sympathizers. The Bolsheviks, when the Russian Social Democratic Party was formed, literally the secret meeting in 1898, I think it was in a rich person sympathizer's home. This is always how it is. It's always how it works. Why do people say this shit? It's so antisocial. It's crazy to me that you could even say this. Now, it's not to say you can't be distrustful. It doesn't mean that you can't say that Tom Steyer and SKYROCKET they're not 100% with us on some of the more important questions, and we should be wary of them or whatever the fuck. But there is an establishment Democratic Party that they are opposed to that is focused on crushing us, and they are ripping that system up. You gotta get your shit together. And that's the thing with like calling yourself a socialist. That's a self-applied label that ultimately has the same informational content as Democrat, right? I like the fact that Graham Plattner is different. Graham Plattner has called himself a socialist in his private writing, but publicly in Maine, he hasn't. I think that he should. But maybe the boomers in Maine are scared of that term. Maybe the boomers in Maine would close their ears and not listen to him. I'll put it to you this way. Let's imagine that you can make someone a socialist as long as you don't say the word socialist. Should you make them a socialist? Should you avoid using socialist? Or should you only want them to be a socialist if they call themselves a socialist using the term socialist? I mean, it's not like, I think when you think about it like that, the label doesn't matter that much. That being said, I do think there's value in calling yourself a socialist. That's what I love about Zohran Mamdani. That's what I love about AOC. They call themselves socialists. That's what I love about Bernie. They call themselves socialists, normalizing the ideas of socialism. But here's the thing about America today. And I feel like a lot of ultras are, how do I put this? They are privileged. And I don't make this an argument because I've tried to disdain your privilege. I'm just saying that you need to understand that if you have the wherewithal and the means to spend your time in these intellectual debates, it's a class signal. You have the opportunity to spend that time. You're not in desperate survival mode. And so it's very easy for you to hold yourself separate and apart from the actual material conditions that people are living in right now. And this kind of debate has been going on since really the founding of leftism, which is like, how much should we spend on theory? How much should we spend on actually materially advancing the interests and the material conditions of the working class? And I think that we need to do both. And neglecting the material conditions, neglecting the strategic and tactical layer of politics in favor of just being a book club means that we are irrelevant. I mean, that's what's been happening since the 70s, folks. The reason why the left is growing again is because there was an electoral breakthrough with Bernie Sanders and AOC and Zohran Mamdani. Let's be honest. That's not even a debatable fact. It would be political suicide for Plattner to identify as a socialist. I don't know about that. But again, I'm sure it wouldn't be helpful. I'm sure they have calculated and they have investigated that with polling, and they're pretty sure that if he called themselves a socialist, it would be used to kind of thought-terminating cliche the boomers. Remember, Maine is old. So for Graham Plattner to do well, he has to do well with white boomers. So I think people think every state is the same as every other state, and Maine is very white. The fact that somebody like Graham Plattner is about to win Maine is Maine the whitest state, or is like it's in the top 3? What are the top 3? I think it's like Vermont, Maine, and like North Dakotas. The North Dakotas. Maine, Vermont, West Virginia, according to the AI. Okay, Maine is 93.43% white. Vermont is 96. West Virginia is 95. So it's the 3rd. I was right. It's in the top 3. People don't understand just how white Maine is. The fact that white people are like, yeah, hell yeah, Medicare for all. Like, yeah, stop the wars. Like, that's amazing. Maine is an ethno state. I mean, I wouldn't call it that, but it's extremely white. So old white people are like, yes, Graham Plattner. And you're like, no, I hate that guy.
I don't need to tell you guys that the Republican establishment is absolutely terrified of Graham Plattner, but also the Democratic establishment is terrified of him. They tried everything to stop him. They threw the kitchen sink at him. They found every fucking Reddit post he made in the past, every negative thing about his life. They ran it, and they couldn't. It took all the king's horses and all the king's men, and the sitting governor of Maine could not defeat him and get to the Senate. So she already dropped out. It was like a, Plattner plus 25 type situation. So this man is on an endless winning streak. I mean, it is W after W after W. He can't be stopped. He's one of those people. He's got that quality where, like, the more you attack him, the stronger he gets. Unfortunately, this is something we saw with Trump. But this is the first time in a long time we've seen this with somebody on the Democratic side, right? You could argue Barack Obama had that quality too, that, like, the more the right attacked him, they came across as so unhinged that it helped Obama with regular people. And there's a similar thing going on here with Plattner. Let's start with this clip here. He's on The Lever with David Sirota, friend of the show, by the way. Everybody check out The Lever. They're a great outlet. And here he's going to talk about how now you have establishment media and, mainstream types who are questioning his credentials for being a voice that represents the working class. Because, you know, hey, his dad was actually an attorney, and attorneys make a decent amount of money. Therefore, can you really trust him as a voice for the working class? Like, are you fucking kidding me? So let's see how he responds to these charges.
I was in this race against Mills and I'm in this race against Collins, and people were like, "These are really working class." I'm like, "Well, they're fucking not." You know, I'll tell you, like, I mean, I've literally worked with my hands my whole life. I don't know how you want to qualify it, but like, they haven't. Right. They came from like historically powerful families. Yes. Yeah, my grandfather was a successful architect. Yeah. I also grew up in Sullivan fucking Maine, and my mom is still working because she has no money. Right. And we're trying to figure out, like, quite frankly, if she can't sell her restaurant, she's got no retirement. Like, my wife and I we're not like broke, right? But there's no money at the end of the month.
No, it's like ridiculous. I mean, it's like a
no, I know.
Who's poor, who's it?
But I think the actual question here, I got into this in the New York Times reports the other day. Of course, the New York Times is very into this very important question. And
you guys want to watch that,
the real
or
question
no?
here is like,
is that boring?
What is the definition of working class today? And for me, it's essentially everybody who isn't just making all of their money on an immense amount of wealth. If you start a business and you get successful, but you still have to go in every single day and work your ass off, I'm sorry, you fucking work for a living.
Okay, can I just say this shit? Like, this right here is vulgar analysis, right? Like, this is the kind of analysis that's not really precise. It's not really thinking about our economic system in a structured way. It is rhetoric. And I think that, like, when people hear the term bourgeois, right? Like, when you say petty bourgeois, a lot of people think, oh, small capitalists. That means they're the exact same interest as large, like the most powerful capitalists. And they don't. They don't. Petty bourgeois. And in fact, different capitalists have different interests. And part of the most successful left-wing movements in history always exploit the gaps between different segments of the owning classes. Labor has oftentimes allied with industrialists against financial capital. Small landholders and peasants have oftentimes allied with industrial bourgeoisie against other capitalist class. Like, we have seen these kind of alliances in the past. So it's important that we be flexible enough to recognize the conditions on the ground. Like the Chinese, like, why do you think it's the hammer and sickle? The reason why it's the hammer and sickle on the Soviet Union's flag is because they had to adapt for the conditions in the Russian Empire, which was not an industrialized country. It had a small industrial bourgeoisie. So they adapted to the large peasant and agricultural class that was rebelling against landlords and against the state. That's why there's a sickle. The hammer represents industrial proletariat, and the sickle represents the agricultural class, which was a evolution and derivation of original Marxist thought, which thought that the industrial proletariat would be the revolutionary vanguard, because the nature of the conditions surrounding their class meant that they were going to be ripe for radicalization and fomenting resistance and would be positioned to supplant the bourgeoisie. Literally, chapter 1 of the pamphlet: the lower strata of the middle class, the small tradespeople, shopkeepers, retired tradesmen generally, the handicraft and the peasants, all these sink gradually into the proletariat, partly because their diminutive capital does not suffice for the scale on which modern industry is carried on and is swamped in the competition with large capitalists. Exactly! Thank you, Grev. The media tried smearing Claire as not working class because her dad is engineer. This is something that you guys need to understand. Truly impoverished people are not political. Lumpen proles are not political. They are in the struggle for survival daily. They don't have understanding of that's just true. Doesn't mean that they're not organizable. It doesn't mean that they can't be amazing leaders and that we should look down upon them. But it's just like being aware of this shit. Of course it's going to be led by people that have downwardly mobile positions. Of course they're going to be the ones that say, hey, this system is failing. Of course they are, because they're going to have the social networks and the privilege to actually identify and see the failure of the system and actually have the wherewithal to organize politically. It's always going to be that way. Always. And so I think there's this kind of valorization of people's biography, which is very liberal. It's a moralist perspective. It is a perspective of somebody who is not actually interested in politics, but is interested in the presentation of what's the best way to put it? Presentation of their own brand as the most correct. Like that is really what it's about. It's moralizing. Man, people have made this argument better than I am right now, and I can't think of a quote. Moralizing. This is where, like, I'm sure, I can't think of a good quote. Moralizing as part of the left. Somebody has to have some sort of theory that could back what I'm saying. Anyone who has the free time and material conditions to sit in Twitch chat is nowhere near struggling. I wouldn't go that far because, you know, things like phones have become so ubiquitous. I'm talking about organized people that can spend their time like knocking doors for free, right? Like, to be part of that vanguard, you're much more likely to have at least some amount of like education, some amount of privilege, some amount of security to be able to do that.
You were, and chances are when you go home, when you look at your tax bill as a small and medium-sized business, you probably have moments where like, fuck, like we're gonna have to figure out how to make this work. You could make $25 billion a year in this country. You are way closer to somebody living in poverty than any of the billionaires.
I mean, you're kind of saying, that's actually, I never thought of it this way. If you're making more of your money or most of your money as passive income,
yeah,
then you're not working.
You're not working.
Because you're literally not working.
You're not working. You don't work. and also, like, I don't count working as like being a fucking CEO.
Right.
Like,
right,
sorry,
right.
like showing up and doing this whole, like, oh no, we'll cut that. We'll do this. I'm like, nah, dog. Like, you got to like show up and like talk to people at the workplace.
Yes.
And these New York Times were like, well, that's a really expansive vision of working class. I'm like, you know what else is expansive? Wealth inequality. Because all of us don't own anything. And a couple people own damn near everything now. The system that begets that always protects itself by trying to drag us all into this whole deep argument about like, well, who actually has the legitimacy to claim, like, fuck off.
Every line of attack they use against him, it fucking backfires colossally. And it just makes him stronger. It just makes him stronger. It just makes him more powerful. So they are also shooting themselves in the dick here. So here's part of his interview with that New York Times reporter. He's going to talk about Iraq and Afghanistan and foreign policy. Listen to this.
We destroyed Iraq and we destroyed Afghanistan and all the suffering, all the killing, all the dying, all the displacement, all of it. And that I'm ashamed of. The anger that I feel is for the people that sent me, who are frankly still the same people who are sending people off right now to go but be in harm's way so we can start and have this stupid war with Iran. I mean, Susan Collins voted to send me to Iraq, and she's also there to help Donald Trump continue this absolutely insane conflict in the Straits of Hormuz. So it's the same people, and that is like, if I have any anger, it is reserved for like the political system itself and the people in it who view war not as like a thing that has a human toll, but they view war as like a political game.
He's one of the only politicians that I've heard talk about like the humanity of Iraqis and people in the Middle East, right? He said,
again, people that are not like, you know, whenever we talk about this, like the Graham Plattner stuff, people are not interested in actually, like, if you were to watch a Bad Empanada video or some of the other anarchists who kind of hang around the Hassan sphere who really hate Graham Plattner, they don't really talk about what he says and compare it to like literally anyone else, right? It is, he has this biographical fact. He joined the American military. Therefore, he's bad. Now, you know, I don't know what else to say to that, which is like, not everybody could be a rich streamer or YouTuber, you know? It is what it is.
We destroyed Iraq. We destroyed Afghanistan. That is rare. Usually the best you get is...
And he comes out of Iraq and Afghanistan and he tells you that it's bad and we should avoid doing it more. And he has the credibility with the American people who do like the military. Something that you can complain and whine all you want, but people think being a veteran makes you more trustworthy. Most Americans, something like 85% of Americans think that if somebody is a veteran, it makes them more likely to be trustworthy. Now, you can just rant and rave that Americans are dumb, or you can see that fact and go, okay, then finding a veteran who hates the military and hates the invasion or hates the invasions, that might be an asset for us if we want to stop America going into war.
A politician going, we made a mistake by doing that. It's like, it's not really just a mistake. It's a war crime. It's illegal. You understand what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference between oops and like, this is nefarious, right? And his experience in war led him to those same conclusions. That like, no, literally, war is a racket. Then when you hear about what he personally went through, and by the way, this is a very graphic story, so forewarning for everybody here, you understand one of the many reasons why he has this burning hatred for war. Listen.
You have been diagnosed with PTSD. You've talked about that. When you look back now, when do you think you started to suffer from that? Because I was also diagnosed from with PTSD. And for me, I can remember exactly what happened and that caused the sort of cascade. What was it for you?
It was 2006, and it wasn't a specific moment. I'll just be, I think that's not actually true. Fuck.
Oh, man. All right, let's watch the Plattner interview. Did anyone else watch this yet? Did Hassan watch it? Or am I the first one? Let's watch it. Let me find it. There we go.
We destroyed Iraq, and we destroyed Afghanistan, and all the suffering, all the killing, all the dying, all the displacement, all of it. And that I'm ashamed of.
In Maine, there's a candidate for Senate who's electrifying the Democratic base and worrying the establishment.
I did 4 infantry tours in the Marine Corps and the Army. I'm not afraid to name an enemy.
He's Graham Plattner, a progressive.
Man, I can't believe people say that he never says he regrets the violence, and then the first thing that happens is he says how he regrets it.
Progressive 41-year-old military vet and oyster farmer. His pitch of starting a working-class revolution and a savvy social media strategy has seen him surge in popularity, but he's been dogged by controversy in his short time in the national spotlight.
Hey all, it's Graham here. As you've probably seen, there's a story that's broken about comments I made on Reddit in an earlier part of my life. I am sorry, but it does not in any way reflect who I am today or the beliefs that I hold.
By the way, I think it's a good thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but I like the fact that Gen Z cancel culture isn't winning. I gotta be honest. As a millennial, I'm so glad that Gen Z cancel culture, stan culture, is losing. I'm so glad that woke one is dying. I'm glad that the Gen Z people who got famous from being Gen Z cancelers are not succeeding. To be honest with you, I like the fact that somebody be like, yeah, I made a dumb post 10 years ago. Who cares? I like the fact that that doesn't work.
Now that his primary opponent, Governor Janet Mills, has dropped out of the race, Washington Democrats are pinning their hopes on him to help win back the Senate in November.
Nothing brings people together like wanting to beat Susan Collins.
Is he ready? I sat down with him to find out.
Not a bad interview setup.
Here's my conversation with Graham Plattner. Thank you so much for coming to New York on this gray day. But I guess you're used to it. I mean,
yeah, well, I mean a little bit. This is nice though.
Yeah,
and at least we're inside on a rainy day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not out in the elements as you normally are. You are now the presumptive Democratic nominee for Senate in Maine after Janet Mills dropped out. Your opponent, Susan Collins, is viewed as, I think, one of the most vulnerable GOP senators up for re-election. I'm sure you know this, a ton of cash is about to drop into the race on both sides. Are you ready for prime time?
Yeah, I mean, at the point, I'll be entirely honest. Like when we set this thing in motion back in August, the entire idea was we wanted to build a different looking politics in the state of Maine. Right? It was based around like community organizing. I'm a firm believer that organized people is the only actual place of power to conflict with organized money. And in our society, money is very organized. We set out on that. You know, we were hopeful. We thought it was going to work. It's, of course, worked in a pretty spectacular fashion thus far.
Millennials not taking accountability. One of my favorite things about Gen Z is the use of the word accountability. That word doesn't mean anything to you. It actually means nothing to you. Accountability is becoming humiliation ritual. I mean, but is it even it is what they mean by accountability is you elevate them to importance and they become important as they get to denounce your badness, and they stand in front of the class and they go, that person did a bad thing and they're a bad person and I'm a good person for pointing it out. That's what they think accountability means. It is going viral, doing a call out post. That's what they're looking for. They want people to be able to go viral doing call out posts. That's what it's really about. It's not really like accountability. What the fuck are you talking about? And there's really grifting. How about just have humility and admit mistakes when merited? That's literally what I do every day. Literally every day. And Graham Plattner was literally started this video admitting a mistake. I mean, it's almost as if words are not. Am I calling out your favorite creators for their grifting cycle where they try to act like they're in judgment of other people as if they matter or in any way relevant and who have accomplished nothing.
We're just going to continue doing exactly that. We're going to continue doing the public events. We're going to continue focusing on the field organizing. And we knew that all the money was going to come. We knew that, like, we were up against, we're up against the establishment of the American.
Now this is absolutely sick. I would have had an issue if Americans had quietly held their nose and voted for this psycho in silence, but acting self-righteous and moralizing about your choice. You are the moralizer. I'm the opposite of the moralizer. You are the moralizer. Graham Plattner is voting in favor of changing American policy on the empire. You're voting, you want to be a moralizer and performatively denounce him. You're the moralizer. Do you not understand what moralizer means? Are you fuzzy on the word? Here, I'll bring it up for you. It means to express beliefs and opinions about moral behavior. That's what you're doing. You're a moralizer. That's literally you. It would be moralizing if I were to go, it's actually good he's a veteran and went into the wars, and the wars made him better. They were a morally upright thing to do. That would be me moralizing. I would be passing judgment on that, but I'm not. What I'm saying is drop the moralizing, which is expressing your beliefs and opinions about moral behavior, and focus on the material politics that we're fighting here. We have a Zionist in Susan Collins who wants more wars, who voted for the Iraq war and supports Trump's Iran war and supports the Gaza genocide, or we have a guy who's against all those things and is trying to stop all those things. That's the difference here. Option A, stop those things. Option B, support those things. I love when people use accountability and moralize, because I know that they have absolutely nothing to say.
Political system. In many ways, we were up against the Democratic establishment up until last week, and we figured at some point we were probably going to win that, and then we were going to go up against the Republican political establishment, which is where we find ourselves now.
You know, obviously the test right now.
Every single liberal who has spent 2 years gleefully asking how Palestine is as an own are now moralizing about this guy, and that's all I need to see. That's exactly correct. That's exactly fucking correct. It's all this. Oh, and it's all the same ultras as well. All the like anti-electoral ultras who are only the red diaper babies who came into politics after 2016. If you came into politics after 2016, you're living in the world that we created through the electoral campaign of Bernie Sanders. Like that is the reality. Now, I'm not trying to say that that means that you can never criticize the world that you're in. I want people to push the boundaries. But if you're going to push the boundaries to try to push the left used to be like that. It used to not care about electoral politics. Do you know what the average age of DSA member was before Bernie Sanders? 68. So like, what are you fucking doing? It was like 40% retired. And it's not because there's a lot of boomer socialists. It's because these were the leftovers of the like anti-war movement of the 70s. It was dead. There was no socialist movement in America.
Is if you can run in a general election. And so, you know, I want to ask straight up, because there have already been quite a few controversies, and we're going to talk about.
Since we're talking about moralizers, Squirrel posted something extremely disillusional and revealing a response to Hassad saying we need to build class consciousness in America. You don't need to do political education and raise a class consciousness to get them there. They're already there. They have been there shortly after the genocide began. I wish that were true. But I think Squirrel is not an American. I don't think Squirrel is even American. I don't think they live in America. So I don't think they know what they're talking about. The worst part is, I mean, it'll be awesome, but after we win and we change the policies, these people are going to try to claim credit. Just so you understand.
That a little bit later. But the GOP is going to dig up everything and more that they can.
Yeah, and probably lie at some point. I mean,
is there something new you want to get ahead of?
No, I mean, like I've lived my life. I've been there for the whole thing, and because of that, like I mean,
Mike, I hate that you had to apologize for your Buck and Netanyahu comments, but you got to let it go. Here's my general feeling. I have no problem apologizing for issues when they come up, right? But what I do have a problem with is with people working with Zionists and Nazis to deplatform myself and Hassan and open us up to personal risk. that you don't have because your face and your name is not next to your political opinions and you have no influence, right? And I have a moderate amount of influence, and Hassad is one of the most influential people in the fucking country, okay? And we get death threats constantly, and we get examined under a microscope. Hassad 100 times worse than I do, but I still get the same shit. And when my name is dragged through the mud and I'm called an anti-Semite by people that are desperate to get their 200 viewer stream to 500 viewers, that gets picked up by mainstream media, and they use it to smear me and every left-wing politician that I support from now on. Because of that, I'm never going to forget that. And the clip of me with Netanyahu was dug up by leftists who sat on it for a year. And the reason why they showed it and spread it is because they were getting called out for supporting Lalo Overruled and attacking the accusers of Lalo Overruled. And in fact, because their communities have not apologized to me, we're going to do more on this in the future. We're gonna keep cleaning up the Twitch leftist space. I think a lot of people think it's an interpersonal thing with me. It's not. It is these people tried to defend a predator. And then in order to cover up for the fact they tried to defend a predator, they dug up an old clip they sat on to distract from the predator being called out and try to associate me with the predator. So that's actually what happened. It's not about me being mad that I got called out. I apologize all the time when I make mistakes on shit. I don't care about that. What I do care about is people lying on me, and then when they're told, hey, you guys are working with Zionists, are using this shit to deplatform Mike, they say they don't care. That's not accountability. That is betraying me. That is betraying the movement. That is slandering the movement. Ray got slandered because of their work. That's fucked up.
Know what I've been through. I know what my behavior has been. I know all of it. And I
don't have any context for what you're talking about now. I just like you because I like your views and your angry vibe. I hear you get self-righteous and moralizing about this guy. That makes me want to speak up. You're just dead wrong. It's not more. Again, you don't know what moralizing means. Again, you don't know what moralizing means. I'm calling for political, tactical solidarity with a guy who's making a lot of people excited in a state where you wouldn't expect it, and saying, hey, this guy's actually good for the policies that he supports. That's not moralizing.
Reason that even after however many months that was, October, when they dropped the opposition research stuff on us, and the whole time there was always this like, oh, there's more coming. I'm always like, I don't know like what this more is going to be. And
these are all your social media posts, etc., which again we'll talk about in a minute.
But there was always this like, oh no, they're going to dig up everything in your life, and you know it's everything you've ever done. I'm like, yeah, I mean I get that, but like I've been through my life, and like I'm certainly an imperfect person, and I certainly went through my struggles, and I mean which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I also know for a fact that like I've never been close to money. I've never been close to power. I've never like, you know, I don't think anything I've ever done has been outside of the realm of like what people do when they struggle, when they suffer, you know, that kind of stuff. And
You know, I think those controversies and the fact that you're such an unknown is part of the reason why the Democratic establishment was worried. Not the whole reason, but certainly part of it. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer recruited, obviously, Janet Mills to run against you because she did have that track record of running statewide, and she was viewed as more moderate in his view. There were no skeletons in her closet, so to speak. And so I'm wondering if you feel a lot of pressure right now, because yours is one of the very few races that could really help to flip the Senate into Democratic control. As you know, the Democrats are extremely anxious about wresting some control back in their favor.
For good reason.
You know, I've had Democrats tell me that the fate of the country is sort of in the hands of you and a few other people now. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't engage with it emotionally because it's way too much. Like this whole experience has been just a continual, one intensely surreal thing after another. I mean, it's like like last summer when this all happened, I mean, my wife and I went from one day living a very small, simple life to, I mean, literally within days, having this whole thing like upend our entire existence. And so there's
because you were recruited, right? Because they saw a video of you.
Yep.
And
Somebody saw a video of me talking about fighting a Norwegian salmon farm in our area. And they were like, that guy seems well-spoken. Maybe we should go talk to him. And they came to my house and they said that we should run for U.S. Senate. And my wife and I were like, that's the most insane thing we've ever heard. Please get out of our house. And then they came back a few days later with more of like a fleshed out plan. And at that point, we're like, oh my God, I mean, it's still insane, but there's something to it. And for us, we've spent a long time being very engaged politically at the local level. And I think both of us are deeply committed to building a significantly better future. And this was an opportunity to do something about it on a scale that, you know, is just frankly hard to comprehend. Still hard to comprehend, to be entirely honest. I mean, I still live in Sullivan, Maine. I still live in my small house and across the street from the boat launch. So my business partner is still like in the yard this week getting the boats ready. And because it's
I think the people that recruited him were old Bernie Sanders staffers.
This time of year, we're putting boats in the water and getting the oysters up. So like that's all still happening while all this other stuff is
Would I
happening.
hang out with Graham Plattner? Abso-fucking-lutely. What do you mean? And I would roast him and I would be like, why the fuck aren't you calling yourself a socialist? Why are you such a pussy about it?
Happening too. So it's a strange disconnect, I guess.
Yeah, and it brings me to this like idea that you've been running as this anti-establishment candidate, but we've talked a little bit about the Republican money that's going to be dropping on you, but there's also the Democratic Party's money and their organizing power to win this campaign. Do you think that hurts your message of being an outsider?
Please remind people, the idiot chatters, that the Bolshevik Revolution couldn't have happened without military people. I don't think anybody who attacks Graham Plattner because of him being a veteran actually cares much about revolution. I think they're just doing what I said, which is moralizing for Gen Z like performative moralizing for clout. They don't really care about any of that type of shit. You know what I mean? They're just doing this like performative stuff. For me, I'm all about what policies is he going to pass, and does he destroy the Zionist stranglehold on American politics, right? And he is firmly on that side. It's the same thing that's pretty much how I feel about every race. Is this person damaging the Zionist stranglehold on politics? If the answer is no, well, then I don't like them. If the answer is yes, I'm willing to look past a lot of problems for that goal. Because to me, the goal of defeating Zionism is more important than me having to look bad. You know, this guy had a bad biography on X, Y, and Z thing. Does he promote more of the bad, or is he against it? It's not that complicated. It's really not that hard.
No, I think it's very clear to everyone just how not the establishment candidate I am or have been.
What atrocities did the Russian vets commit at the behest of the Tsar? I wouldn't have those baby killers in my Bolshevik vanguard, Lenin famously. Yeah, I mean, it's very funny. It's very funny. Well, honestly, like Mao, the same thing. Mao allowed entire warlords to join his side. He allowed armies to switch sides, who had shot and killed communists in the war. He allowed them to switch sides. And you know why they did that? Because they recognized giving people the opportunity to give up and change and point their guns against the capitalists was more important for winning the war than going, I refuse to stand with anybody who ever fought against communism. Because he was concerned about winning, not about moralizing.
You know,
you don't win a war by killing every one of your enemies. You win a war by getting all your enemies to stop fighting you. And sometimes that involves getting people to switch sides who used to fight you. It's not that complicated. It's just basic logic. And again, that's why there's a big CIA effort to make leftists, ultra leftists, the left in America. There's a reason why the CIA talks about the compatible left. What they're talking about is strains of leftist thought that are disorganizing and ineffective. They're worried about an effective left. So they promote like anarchism. They promote ultra leftism because that shit makes you stupid, makes you ineffective.
Without question, the Democratic Party wants to retake the Senate more than anything else. And almost
some of you saying you can't forgive someone for being in the U.S. military need to go to church and learn some grace. No, it's just funny. I'm sorry. I refuse to forgive you. That's why I'm going to let the Zionists keep control of the American state. I'm going to let Susan Collins keep voting for fascist Supreme Court justices. I'm gonna let Susan Collins keep voting to destroy our fucking ecological reality and make climate change worse. Oh my God, thank you. Moralizing criticism and critical morality. Holy shit. Flat, bombastic, bragging, sonical, putting on a great show of rude vigor and attack, yet hysterically sensitive to the same quality in others, brandishing the sword with enormous waste of energy, lifting it high in the air only to let it fall down flat, constantly preaching morality and constantly offending against it, sentiment and turpitude most assuredly conjoined, concerned only with the point at issue, yet always missing the point, using with equal arrogance petty bourgeois scholarly semi-erudition against popular wisdom, and so-called sound common sense against science, discharging itself in ungovernable breath with a certain complacent levity, clothing a Philistine message in plebeian form, wrestling with the literary language to give it, so to speak, a purely corporeal character, willingly pointing at the writer's body in the background, which is itching in every fiber to give a few exhibitions of its strength, to display its broad shoulders and publicly to screech its limbs, proclaiming a healthy mind and a healthy body, unconsciously infected by 16th century most abstruse controversies, and by the fever of its body to throw on dogmatic, narrow thinking, and at the same time appealing to petty practice in the face of all real thought, raging against reaction, reacting against progress, incapable of making the opponent seem ridiculous by ridiculously abusing him through the whole gamut of tones, Solomon and Markov, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, a visionary and a Philistine in one person, a loudest form of indignation, a form of indignant loutishness, and suspended like an enveloping cloud over it all, the self-satisfied Philistine's consciousness of his own virtue, such as the Grabian literature of the 16th century. If our memory does not deceive us, the German folk anecdote has set up a lyrical monument to the song of Henneke. Der starke Knecht. To Herr Hensen belongs the credit of being one of the recreators of Grabian literature, and at this field, one of the German swallows heralding the coming springtime of the nations. Jesus, what a writer he was, huh? Quixote, thank you. Don Quixote. That's funny. Herr Hensen never became a Republican. He has been one since his political birth. On his side, therefore, immutability, the immobility of a final state, consistency. On the side of his adversary, wavering, fickleness, turning about. Herr Hensen has not always been a revolutionary. He has become one. Now, of course, the turning about is on Herr Hensen's side. With the immoral character of turning about has been turned about too. It is now known as correcting themselves. On the communist side, on the other hand, immutability has lost its character of high morality. What has become of it? Incorrigibility. Remaining constant or turning about, both are moral, both are immoral. Moral on the side of the Philistine, immoral on the side of his adversary. For it is for the art of the Philistine as critic consists in calling out rogue et noir, red and black, at the right time, the right word, at the right time. Ignorance is generally considered a fault. We are accustomed to regard it as a negative quantity. Let us observe how the magic wand of the Philistine as critic converts a minus quality of intelligence into the plus quality of morality. Like, this is basically how people are, right? Like, you know.
No map that has a Democratic Senate it does not include flipping the state of Maine. We have to flip the state of Maine. We have to get rid of Susan Collins. For a whole myriad of reasons, not just flipping the Senate. So they're going to come and help us out. The thing that's important to know is we welcome their support in with the money, because we're going to be up against, I mean, the NRSC has already put aside almost $50 million.
That's the number I heard. Yeah.
For this race. That's insane. I mean, also, by the way, could you imagine investing $50 million in the state of Maine? Like in anything, be a different looking state. The fact that they're just going to blow it on like negative TV ads just shows how gross and insanely flawed the system that we have is around politics. But we'll take their help because we're going to need it on that front. But we're not going to take as frankly, direction or advice on what we're doing, because what we've built is ours, and we have 15,000 active volunteers in the state of Maine. And we have more signing up every single day. And a lot of people who were supposed to be really, really good at politics, who were the experts, they all said that all this was entirely impossible. And we didn't just prove them wrong, but we did so in rather spectacular fashion. And we're just going to keep doing that.
You know, you had said that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had not really reached out to you until Janet Mills sort of dropped out. And you've had a conversation with him recently. Did you tell him that? Did you say, hey, bud, stay out of my business?
No, I said, look, we are happy to work together to beat Susan Collins. I mean, nothing brings people together like wanting to beat Susan Collins. It's a very unifying thing. The conversation was short. We did not get into details. He said, congratulations. I said, thank you very much. He said, the priority is to beat Collins. I said, that's my priority too. And however we can work together to do it effectively is what I'm willing. I mean, that's what I want.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched you on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
And one of the main messages that you have, though, is not to put too fine a point on it, but, you know, F the establishment.
Yeah.
And I guess, do you think Schumer should be replaced?
To be clear, I don't know anyone in whatever petty election this is about. I do not care. I'm seeing Americans vociferously support someone who committed horrific atrocities and guarded a death camp, and it pisses me off. Okay. I don't know how to put this, but he's going to talk about all of that, right? And that's why I want to play this. He's going to talk about this. And here's the thing, and I don't mean this to be mean. I don't mean this to be mean. But how in your mind does Israel get all these weapons from America? Like, what's the process that they get the weapons? Like, why is Israel able to, like, bomb so many countries? Like, how does that happen? Like, what's the process? Start from scratch. I want you to write it out, like, write paragraphs. Paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. I want you to tell me how that happens. And I think if the answer is you don't know, which is the answer for almost all of you, I do know, and I'll explain it. Basically, what happens is America has had this long relationship with Israel. We've talked about this for a long time, but Israel got this relationship because it was an imperial outpost of the British Empire. And they promised to be the cat's paw of the British Empire in the Middle East when they were founded. That was the Zionist promise, okay? And then after World War II, Israel was still in the pockets of the British. They didn't sever their connection to the British completely until the Suez Crisis, where the United States asserted its dominance over the British, French, and Israel and forced them to reopen the Suez Canal. From that point on, Israel started to realign itself with the America, which was a much more natural alliance because there was a large Jewish population in America that would be a key source of money and power for Israel. And Israel established itself firmly into the American camp over the next few decades. And they began to directly use state power to influence American politicians to increase their support for Israel. Now, we have a lot of different ways to discuss it, but in the modern era, it now is a formalized connection to both parties we know as the Israel lobby. Now, the flow of weapons to Israel includes nuclear weapons. Because of this relationship, because of the way they have manipulated our political system and built those institutions, they have gotten every weapon, including nuclear weapons, from the United States of America. Without that connection, Israel as a modern state does not exist. So the way that that is now done is that weapons are manufactured in America and they are transported physically to Israel via ship and plane. How is that accomplished? Politicians in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives write that into law, and the American state carries out that law. Who are the people that write those laws? And I'm sorry, it's just this straightforwardly simple. Graham Plattner will be one of the 100 senators that write those laws. He's saying we're not going to do that anymore. If Israel doesn't have those laws saying give the weapons to Israel, they cannot exist as a country. They cannot do the genocide, which you say you're opposed to. This is actually one of the most important ways to stop Israel, is by making politicians in America realize that being pro-Palestinian can not only not hurt you, but help you win. It's that fucking simple. All the other shit you're talking about resisting Israel, this is like literally one of the most important things you could do to resist Israel is to elect anti-Zionist politicians in America, literally. Now, I'm not trying to say this as some sort of like American-centric exceptionalist. That's just how the fucking flow of weapons materially works. It goes from America to Israel because of the governmental policy. If you're not working overtime, if you're not willing to compromise a lot to change that policy, then you literally are like, all the other work you do to stop the genocide is nothing compared to stopping the flow of weapons and money from America. Do you understand what $350 billion is? That's the amount of money America has given to Israel. That doesn't include the trillions we spend on the military and the trillions we spend on diplomacy on all the states in the Middle East to prop Israel up. We're talking about a scale of resources that is almost incomprehensible, and all of that can be withdrawn. Every single bit of what I just said can be withdrawn if we elect 50 people like Graham Plattner. You have lost sight of the fucking material reality of the genocide in favor of online posturing and moralizing. If Graham Plattner wins, Israel becomes more imperiled physically. It's more dangerous to Israel for Graham Plattner to be elected than 1,000 fucking hypersonic missiles fired at the Iron Dome. That's actually funny, but true, because the Iron Dome is and the THAAD systems are all set up to fend off missiles, and there's infinite money to do that. And they will just get, the damage will be repaired. The Iron Dome missiles will be rebuilt, and they will be flooded in because America, the largest country in the world, has trillions of dollars that it's willing to give to Israel to prop it up.
Placed as leader then? I mean, are you...
Yeah, my criticisms remain exactly the same as they were last Wednesday. I do think that that leadership in the Democratic Party has really failed the moment. I don't think, I mean, for a bunch of different reasons. I do think that Senator Schumer has not really risen to the occasion, and I think we do need new leadership in the party without question.
Last question on this, and it is about Susan Collins. As you know, she has been there since the 90s. She has been a very deft sort of fundraiser and campaigner in the state of Maine. I mean, what do you give your chances, really?
Very high, extremely high, actually. One, polling bears that out. Now, I am a Democrat in Maine, so I'm wary of polling. There's no question about it. But there is a consistency to it, which is nice.
Because I think there was another candidate that was trying to run against her.
Yes.
She was up in the polling, and
I think
Susan Collins won.
I think a couple things have changed. One, I think polling methodology has changed significantly since 2020. And Maine has always been notoriously a hard state to poll because we have an aging population. There are a lot of people that still use landlines. There are a lot of people that still like do mail. So there are, but a lot of the more recent polling takes all that into account, which it didn't used to. But there's a deeper change, and I think it's a couple things. First and foremost, and people often forget this, 2020, Collins had already voted for Brett Kavanaugh, but Roe had not been overturned. And Collins's real pitch for a long time was, like Olympia Snow, she tried to make herself look like, Olympia Snow actually was this, by the way, but Collins is trying to make herself look like this moderate Republican who will buck her party, a woman senator from Maine who is pro-choice, who supports reproductive rights. That fiction could still exist in 2020 because Roe was still in place. Roe is no longer in place. I mean, she said it was settled law. She said it was never going to change, which is why she voted for Brett Kavanaugh. Well, at this point, it has changed because of her vote for Brett Kavanaugh. So either she was lying or she completely misunderstood what was happening. Either way, that doesn't show like a really solid, political acumen. And I think in many ways, that alone is relatively disqualifying, not just because of the implications, but because of the, frankly, just incompetence of it. Then there's the element where, at this point, I don't think you could come up with a better avatar for the long-serving, self-enriching establishment politician than Susan Collins, who raises an immense amount of money outside of the state of Maine, who takes an immense amount of money from AIPAC. She takes an immense amount of money from special interest groups and foster.
By the way, he's specifically calling out AIPAC money as bad. I think there's a lot of people that exist in a social milieu where seems like bare minimum to you. And it's because your brain isn't very sharp, right? There's a difference between my social milieu thinks Israel is bad and politicians in power do something. Like, the gap between those two is a fucking chasm. And if your way of thinking, when you look at that, if you look at Graham Plattner calling out AIPAC funding as bad, and your reaction is to be like, oh yeah, that, you know, and not ecstatic excitement, you don't understand politics. You legitimately do not like, if you are not going woo and fucking pogging and soy facing, you do not understand politics. You do not understand the state of reality in our country. Like, you are actually delusional. You are sitting in some sort of fantasy where, like, being pro-Israel isn't the default of every politician. You are in some delusion. You're in a bubble. You are in a fantasy. I wish I was in there. It sounds fucking cool.
So fuel companies, and she has a very high-performing stock portfolio. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people in Maine look at that and are like, yeah, I don't think that is actually the politics I want representing me.
I want to take a bit of a step back and talk a little bit about you, because I think for many people across the country, you're an unknown quantity. Yeah. You're out of almost nowhere.
Guy. I'm a random oyster farmer from Sullivan, Maine. So, yeah.
So you're pitching yourself as a working class man. You're a firearm instructor, a gun owner.
Yep.
In your campaign launch video, you're wearing a dirty hoodie, you're shucking oysters, you're swinging a kettlebell, you're chopping wood. What kind of masculinity are you trying to evoke with that?
A healthy one. One in which, like, it is entirely fine to be a weightlifting, kettlebell swinging, gun owning, kind of like rugged guy. You can.
By the way, that's a lot of the reason why people don't like Graham Plattner. A lot of the guys who don't like Graham Plattner, they don't like the fact that he's like that, because that triggers their PTSD from high school or whatever, where they got bullied a lot. And they don't like politics having guys like that, you know, being raised up. They want, you know, they hate that. They're a balding theater kid. They don't want a guy who lifts a kettlebell.
Do all of that and see your strengths or see your privilege as things that are to be used specifically to, like, uplift and help other people, not to, like, impose on them. I think right now, especially, there are a lot of young men in our society who are being dragged into this kind of, like, really dangerous, misogynistic, like, manosphere. I just watched Louis Theroux's documentary the other night. It's horrifying. Sadly, for me, having spent my life as an angsty young man, and then being in the service, in the Marine Corps, in the Army, in the infantry, in both very, very masculine spaces, like, I have seen that kind of toxic masculinity really attract a lot of young men, and a lot of it comes from the fact that I think that there are a lot of men who are deeply, deeply insecure, who, whether it's because of trauma, whether it's because society has told them they're supposed to be a certain level of successful and they aren't that. And so then they feel like they've failed, or that society has somehow failed them. And then they're given this story that the only way to make that up is to, like, impose on other people. To uplift yourself, you have to put others down, which I think is nonsense. I think that just results in you being alone.
Why have Democrats struggled so much with men lately?
Honestly, I think it's because they've left behind the working class. And hear me out here. There was a time where, like, people who, like, worked for a living, used their hands, were very, very close to the Democratic Party. Through the labor movement, through just kind of general policies, the Democratic Party was once the policy that really represented working folks. And there is this vision of masculinity in America, which has a lot to do with that exact thing, right? Like, kind of working, building, creating. There are elements of that I think are very positive. I do not believe in this whole, like, white working class, that the working class is just a bunch of rugged dudes in hard hats. That's not the working class. Working class is significantly bigger than that, and it's very multicultural, multi-gendered, multiracial, the whole 9 yards. But there is an element in our society that we view.
Well, hold on, my audio broke.
Elites. Okay. There's just an element.
You don't have to whisper it.
Sorry, I'm in New York. But it looks like this party, and sounds like, and
oh, somebody's trying to moralize him, one of his Reddit posts. What I would say about the Reddit post stuff is most of the Reddit posts are pretty fucking based. And the dumb ones he made are usually like over 10 years old. And some of them are cringe. Some of them are problematic. But it's very clearly somebody making unguarded posts that were anonymous, that were not about being hateful. You know what I mean? There were some of the, like, for example, the like black people tip one is the most cringe post he did. And, you know, why is there asking the question of why there is a stereotype about black people not tipping is not the same thing as saying black people don't tip. You know what I mean? It is a cringy question to ask. It's embarrassing. It's immature. If you come from white as fuck Maine. But the idea that like, okay, guys, we got to vote for the Zionist. I found this guy's Reddit posts where he asked a cringe question 10 years ago. Like, give me a fucking break, man. With this catchword, the Philistine as critic can condemn any development without understanding it. He can solemnly set up an undevelopable undevelopment beside it as moral immaculateness. Yeah, of course. Have you watched the Ashley St. Clair videos? Not really. And I'm not saying that's acceptable. Like, you know, that you know, spreading stereotypes or asking questions about stereotypes. You know, I think maybe I have a different perspective because I have been in anti-racist spaces. And I've talked about this concept before, but there are places that are safe places for marginalized groups where there's extremely low tolerance for microaggression. And then there are safe places to learn where people can ask questions or learn about marginalized groups that they're not a part of in a non-judgmental space so they can be educated, right? As long as they're not attempting to advance hate or bigotry, they can ask the questions they're not supposed to ask, or they're, you know, it's not polite to ask. They can ask questions about identities or groups that they're not a part of. And sometimes those questions are going to come across as bigoted and stupid and ignorant. That's what a safe place to learn is about. It's about dispelling ignorance. And I think a lot of people don't like the idea that we can dispel ignorance. Like, they want to posture themselves as the most enlightened. And to be the most enlightened, they have to have targets who they are more enlightened than. It's like, are you trying to spread awareness? Are you trying to spread education? Are you trying to spread nuance? Or are you posturing socially?
And in some ways kind of did become this party of sort of like Ivy League schools and elite, that like when that was left behind.
I mean, the data shows it.
As long as I don't have to explain why using the N-word is wrong for the 1 billionth time, I'm pretty sure that no one here. In fact, I have been somebody who has fought most fiercely against the N-word Andes. Not that I deserve credit. It's basic. The N-word is a death threat. It's not that complicated. You know, that's all you need to know. The N-word is not like cracker or something like that. It is a death threat. The purpose of the N-word is to tell a black person that they are stepping outside of their racial position to such an extreme degree that you are threatening them with lynching. That's what the N-word is for. It's casually bringing up. Sometimes people use it in that way. Sometimes they use it just to bring up the racial. They're basically just reminding of the black person of their position, subordinate position in the racial caste system. That's what the N-word is for. And it's backed up by violence, extra legal violence. That's what separates the N-word from like cracker or mayo or anything like that. It is a death threat. And everybody understands that intuitively. That's why people don't say it. That's why they'll say, you know, such and such is the new N-word. Well, they don't say the N-word because the N-word is that. So if you ever need to explain why the N-word is so bad, that's why. It is a death threat. And every black person understands that. So if a white person is saying the N-word to them, that white person is saying, I can kill you and get away with it because I'm white. It is so, you know, that's why it's different. Oh, yeah, we've got noodle. Theo made noodle. Pad cow pow? Pad crapow. Okay, thank you. Noodle. It's a difference between saying you're a subhuman versus your culture is shitty, it has no flavor. No, it's more than that. It's more than just saying you're a subhuman. It's saying you're a subhuman and I dominate you, or else. And so, like, that's why there's such a strong reaction to it.
Yeah, I mean, the strength of the Democratic Party is in cities. It's among the
Just got back. Are you describing the N-word? Yeah. Somebody said I don't want to have to explain why the N-word is bad, and I was just doing it to the white audience. I'm trying to help people who don't understand. Like, there is a superficial plausibility to the argument. It's just a word. Why are you getting so worked up about it? You know, I should be able to, if you believe in equality, I should be able to say it. Like, what, you know, I see black people saying it. Like, why can't I not say it? There's this kind of superficial plausibility to a certain type of sheltered white person. And I'm dispelling it completely and explaining what the N-word separates the N-word from other things. In America, black people were held to such a subordinate degree that they could be killed for social faux pas. And the N-word is calling on that memory. No other group had to face that. Literally no other group had to face that. And it's, you know, there were thousands and thousands of people that were murdered. Children, too.
Educated.
Yeah.
It's among women, actually.
And I think a lot of that came because the Democratic Party abandoned organized labor, quite frankly.
Is that what you were tapping into when you did your thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, it wasn't, yes, I mean, but I'll be honest, like, not performatively. This is just my life. I mean, I do swing kettlebells, I lift weights, I work on the ocean with my hands, I shoot guns. Like, it's like it's all, there's nothing performative about it. It's just kind of my existence. So yeah, I think I want us to be able to reconnect with a healthier version of masculinity, one that is rooted in hard work and building things.
You're not a looks maxer?
Definitely not a looks maxer. I'm not going to smack myself in the face with hammers because that seems to be like possibly the dumbest thing a human being could ever do. But, you know, that's just me.
One of the things that I have heard debated about you quite a bit is your working class roots. Because, you know, you grew up in a small town.
Yep.
Didn't graduate college, became a bartender.
Yep.
But also your father was an attorney.
Yep.
Your grandfather was a Cornell-educated architect,
Yep.
quite well known. You went to private schools. So
kind of. Well, the private school thing, I would just like to, so I...
Tell me.
By the way, this is so funny because it's like, this is how much our understanding of class is degraded, that people think being an architect or having some sort of any professional success at all means you're not working class. Like, oh, your family was not in the streets, that means you're not working class. It's like the guy had a job drawing buildings. Like, yes, is having a professional job mean that you probably have a more secure lifestyle because you have some sort of talent or skill that is more in demand from the market? Yes, but it doesn't mean you're super mega rich. It's just silly.
Okay, so in so I grew up in Sullivan, Maine. Went to Mountain View Elementary School, which is very small. I think my graduating, I think we had like 12 kids or something, 12 to 14. It was tiny. And my mom really, really wanted my brother and I to get like a high quality education. And this place in Connecticut, Hotchkiss, gave us a really good financial aid package. So my mom was like, all right, that's where you're going. I did not want to go at all because I didn't want to leave Maine. So I got sent down there, and there was a moment which I will never forget. And it was the moment I knew that I had to leave this place. I went down to Hotchkiss, and they had like, you know, monthly or weekly, I think they called it chapel or something like that. And people, you know, graduates or, you know, people would always come and give motivational speeches and whatnot. And the first one I went to, some guy came, some business magnate type, and was trying to kind of inculcate in everyone like the concept of work ethic. And at some point he was just like, who in here's had a job? And I put my hand up, and I was the only kid in the room that put his hand up. And I realized that it wasn't a real question. It was a rhetorical question because of course none of these kids had held jobs. And I then felt really embarrassed because I'm like 13. And like, I realized, oh my God, like I'm like, there are a lot of people here who are like super wealthy. And I'm not. And my family's not, and like we were fine for the record. I grew up solidly middle class without.
Class is the relationship to the means of production. It's an academic definition. That's what he's saying, by the way. He's putting it into words, which is, do you work for a paycheck or are you living off of your investments? Are you living off of passive income, unearned income? Are you a landlord? Are you an investor? But he also throws in upper tier corporate management as not working class as well, which, by the way, that's correct. They aren't.
No question. But like worked for, I mean, all the way. I worked through high school. I bagged groceries. I did landscaping, worked for the Appalachian Mountain.
His dad was a successful attorney and gave him $200K for a house. It just sounds like a fucking boomer who bought a house, you know? And that, by the way, almost every millennial who owns their own house got help. Because, you know, there is no way, like, it's very hard to work your way into a down payment these days. Now, if you were smart enough to buy a house when interest rates were 2-something%, congratulations, you fucking did it, and I'm proud of you. It's not to say that nobody did it, but it tends to be that a lot of people got help with the down payment. It's pretty normal shit. You know, it's pretty normal shit. And is it luck? Is that privilege? Abso-fucking-lutely, that's privilege. He talks about that later, so we should talk. We'll cover it.
Mountain Club on the professional trail crew for 2 years before I joined the Marine Corps. And so like there was just this, I don't know, this real sense of...
My parents didn't give me any money for tuition. My parents didn't give me any help. They didn't ever give me a down payment. That's my life. Am I working class?
Like I was very out of place. So I got myself kicked out by Christmas. I was at Hotchkiss for like 3 months. And then I went back to Maine and I went to John Baptist, which is up in Bangor, which was far more my speed. Lots of just normal Maine kids who were more of my kind of world.
I mean, how do you think about class? Is working class how you grew up or how you live now? Like, how do you, because you grew up, you're describing it as solidly middle class.
I think the difference today...
And you make your, you know, in your pitches, I'm of the working class now. I work with...
I don't know how any Zoomer has a home without living paycheck to paycheck, getting a VA loan through service or being from money. That's exactly what happened. Their family helped them by paying their tuition and probably gave them a down payment assistance by paying, like literally paying for the down payment. Or that's how people get into housing. That's how like people lever themselves out. That's like the middle class lever that a lot of people don't know. Right? If you don't have student loans and your parents pay for a down payment, you can make the same money as somebody else who has student loans and doesn't have help for a down payment. But within 15 years, you'll have $500,000 more than them because you got on the property ladder and because you didn't have to pay back. You were able to save while they had to pay back student loans. I do mortgage for a financial cooperative. I could guarantee parents help almost all young home buyers. Thank you, Dom. Of course, that's true. Speaking of helping young home buyers, chat, please consider supporting your favorite streamer, Mike from PA, even though he is very confrontational and he takes on all these factional fights that people don't want you to take. They want me to pretend Connie Chan is cool and that Graham Plattner is not helpful for the anti-Zionist movement. So if you like the fact that I'm willing to have strong positions and argue in favor of them, please consider supporting the stream by subscribing. Thank you. Help me own a home one day. My Zoomer friend was able to save for a house because she lived with her parents and they didn't charge her rent. I mean, that's another way. Yeah, that's another way. I will give my parents credit. They occasionally let me sleep on the couch at different periods of my life without charging me rent. Although, actually, no, they charged me rent. Never mind. There was a couple times they didn't, but mostly they did. And by the way, it doesn't piss me off. It doesn't piss me off. I just think that if the shoe was on the other foot, I would not have done that. Had I been my parents to me, I would have done things differently. But I'm not bitter about it. My friend kicked me out of his house, which his grandpa paid for, sold his house and got his grandfather's house for free. We are not the same. I mean, yeah. Thank you for supporting Shoycott, Steyer, and Platter when people are being brave. I'm not really the biggest Steyer fan, but compared to everybody else, he's very clearly the best candidate, right? Like, everybody else sucks shit. I mean, I'm not really the biggest Steyer fan, but like, come on.
Yeah, and I am. I mean, I work with my hands. I don't make a lot of money. My wife and I work incredibly hard.
She's very anti-homeless. And then she tried to spread the RNC attack against Hassan. She called Hassan a racist, basically. And then she got endorsed by Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. And then she was very anti-homeless. Not endorsed by DSA. So she's backed by the California establishment. So I'm not a fan.
And we probably make like $60,000 a year combined. We don't have money left over. We're not saving for retirement. I'll tell you that. I was lucky. I got to buy my house in 2017 and I could not afford my house today. My house has gone up almost 3 times in value, but my
family money?
Was that?
Do you have family money?
My father gave me the mortgage, except of course because he's my dad and he's an attorney, he gave me a significantly higher interest rate than the bank would have because he's a lawyer. But it was I could have used a VA home loan if I had wanted to, but at that point it was just easier to do it that way. And I mean but to be fair, I could never get that today. because I can't afford the mortgage. If it was 3 times what it is, my income hasn't gone up 3 times. And so I was lucky to get it then. And so my wife and I very much recognize the life we've been able to
Wait, what happened? Did we lose frames? What happened? How the hell do you think it's a good idea to trash Hassan? Well, I mean, he was supporting Shoycott, right? So she was mad that he was, campaigning for Shoycott. So she wanted to join in with the Republicans and the establishment to attack Hassan, right? Because her campaign was like faltering. So it is what it is. Oh, chat, we have a level 5 hype train. Please consider supporting the stream by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 sub. If you have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account. You can be like Super Cheetah Fan who gave 5 subs. I'd really appreciate it.
To build has come from a lot of like luck. But on top of that is also my VA healthcare and my VA pension, which that really is kind of like that's the baseline that really allows all this to happen. If it wasn't for the VA healthcare thing, I wouldn't have had the freedom to start a business, to move back to my hometown, figure out. I mean, I was flat. I moved back to Maine in 2016 from DC, and I was broke. I was living at my mom's house because I had spent a number of years very depressed, which we can get to about after my combat service. But when it comes to like middle class, working class, I will be very upfront. I think this day and age, you are working class if you work and you make your money from work and wages. Like the world of wealth disparity has become so intense that there are just so many people now who are sitting on so much money who do not work. They make money off their investments. They make money off of their wealth. And I know it's an expansive definition of working class, but I think you need to have an expansive definition of working class when we have the most expansive margin of wealth inequality in the history of the country. In the state of Maine, almost everybody's working class. Everybody works. Everybody works. Everybody struggles. Everybody has, like, if the hospital closes and that really impacts you, you're probably a working class person. If you're really rich, it doesn't matter where the hospital is. You probably can go wherever you want for healthcare.
It's interesting. I'm listening to you, and on the one hand, it makes political sense to say the working class is this very expansive group that anyone who gets a W-2 and has to pay taxes off a salary, which is different than if you're making it off your investments, is working class, right? Yeah. And you get a different kind of hit, as we all know, just having been in tax season. By the same token, it's a strange kind of idea of what working class is. I know people who really consider themselves working class who grew up, with a lot of struggle. Yep. And that feels probably to them like that's too expansive a definition.
I spend a lot of time around labor unions.
It's so funny, like, we've got to gatekeep being working class, guys, like Grant Plattner, not working class. And we do these kind of games because it's not talking about the policies. That's why we spend so much time on these games, because we're not talking about how he's anti-Israel. We're not talking about how he's pro-Medicare for all. We're not talking about all of his other policies that are going to help working people be better off. That's why we do these fucking games.
A lot of time around community groups that focus on, everybody seems to subscribe to the same definition because it is so substantial. And to me, it is expansive, but I think it's also I think it's the most accurate definition of what we're seeing right now. And I'll be very upfront. I get a chuckle out of the fact that, like, a lot of folks in this political system who come from incredible amounts of privilege and wealth, they're the first ones to be like, are you really working class? Are you really like, oh, I don't know, you're just out there not making a lot of money and working on the ocean, but your dad was a small town attorney. Does that mean that, like, you can't actually represent working people? I honestly think it's a tool. It's a political weapon that throughout history has been deployed against people whose primary political goal is to improve the lives of working folks around them. It's always to call into question, like, their bona fides.
Well, to be clear, I'm asking you because I'm interested in hearing how you describe yourself.
Well, no,
and
I don't
how
mean you.
Well, to be clear, just to understand how you, tell your own story, and
Dave,
also how you view what your coalition is, because obviously you're pitching yourself to the working class.
Which is also, I think we're winning by spectacular margins. because in a state like Maine, everybody's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And we all do feel very much that us and our neighbors in our communities, we're all kind of suffering the same way.
Thanks.
So after high school,
yep,
you joined the Marines at 19.
The real woke Bay. Thank
19,
you.
yeah, 19.
And I want to ask you about your tours in the Middle East. You went to Iraq in 2005, is that right? Yeah. I mean, we were there at the same time. I covered Iraq from 2002, before the invasion, to 2010. Why did you want to serve? Because you were anti-war. You were out protesting the conflict. I just saw this post about you actually in Maine kind of protesting George W. Bush.
I got dragged out of a Bush rally in, I think, November, December of 2002.
I want to thank the people who take time, who work hard to make sure that the democracy is strong.
Plattner, do not attack Iraq.
Yeah, so it's a strange thing to sign up.
Everybody says that, but like it never was for me. I mean, like one, I wanted to be a soldier since I was about 2. I mean, I was singing the Marines hymn as like, I think I was like 4 or 5 when I first memorized it. And I don't know why that is. Like I don't come from like, I mean,
I'll tell you why. The massive propaganda campaign that every American boy got. I'm about the I'm similar age. We got this shit non-stop.
It is more than a trial by fire. It is a rite of passage. A challenge to join the elite. And if you succeed, if you can master your fear, outsmart your enemy, and never yield even to yourself, you will be changed forever. The few, the proud, the Marines.
This is the type of shit we got when we were 5 years old, okay? We were pumped to this propaganda as kids. The idea that we would be some sort of like super soldier, badass D&D paladin. I got the same propaganda.
Compete, you've got to be strong. To win, you've got to be smart. Maybe you can be one of us, the few, the proud, the Marines.
You got some like Dark Souls ass chess. When you were like 5, this shit was on Nickelodeon, okay? See if there's like more. Stick.
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
I do not understand how all this worked after Vietnam. Vietnam was a very long time ago, bro. A very long time ago. This is another one I remember. This worked on Graham Plattner, folks.
The passage is intense. But if you complete the journey, you will find your destiny among the world's greatest warriors. The few, the proud, the Marines.
When somebody's like, I don't know why I wanted that. Well, because they were pumping you through full of nonstop propaganda, bro.
We have a long lineage of military service in my family, but like my dad wasn't in the service. My parents were not enthused about my joining of the Marine Corps. But I always had an attraction to, I think, service, but I also had an attraction to adventure. And, you know, in our society, we do very much sell militarism and war in this very romantic fashion about adventure and excitement. And then there's also, and I think you can probably understand this too, there is this weird attraction when everyone tells you that the only way you could ever experience it is to be there. That it's a thing that is so unique and so its own thing that no one could ever get it unless you had.
Honestly, like I'm just gonna, you can call me whatever you want to call me. I think that if you're a dude and you don't understand what he's getting at, you're lying to yourself. All of us want to feel like we have been tested and we have proven our strength. It's just a masculine idea that's spread into your brain from when you're a little kid, right? Like, duh. And it's problematic. I'm not saying it's not, but it is what is spread into our head. And like, he's just being completely honest about it. And I find this refreshing. I don't know, maybe I'm fucking nuts, but I find this refreshing. I like the fact that he can be self-aware and say, hey, I thought it would be adventure. I thought it would be this. I was naive. I wanted to test myself. Like, that's just, he's just being like completely honest. He's not bullshitting. He's not coming up with a whole bunch of like excuses.
Seen it. And I think for me, there was an element of curiosity to that, where it's like, well, I mean, like, what is it then? And and I, you know, I grew up reading military history books, and I was into Civil War reenacting, and I was like it's like a little military nerd. But I also in high school became pretty critical of certain elements of, I think, American foreign policy. Certainly when the war in Iraq was kicking off, I was like, this seems like a deeply stupid idea.
Yeah, I mean, you had an image of you in high school holding up a sign saying...
Honestly, remarkable how similar Graham Plattner is to me. I think a lot of people, maybe you don't know my biography because I don't talk about it a lot, but he is so remarkably similar to me in a lot of ways. It is so interesting. We're like very much the same guy, to be honest with you, chat. We're very similar. And if that makes you dislike me, it is what it is. Thank God you didn't get the tattoo. The difference between me and Graham Plattner is I was a lot better in school. Like, that's the thing about me, is I was always at the top of my class, you know, like, and I could ace every, you know, standardized test. That's pretty much the only difference between the two of us. I didn't think and also I had a different perspective on the war. I left because of the war. He joined because, even though he opposed the war. That's the difference between the two of us.
Free Kosovo, Chechnya, Kashmir, Palestine, Kurdistan, and Tibet. That's
yeah. I got really into Irish politics when I was in high school, which introduced me to, I think, some sort of a connection to like national liberation struggles and seeing.
That's a big difference. I can't quite shake. I could tell you right now that had I been a couple years older, my life would have gone differently. Like, that's just the fact is, I was in the exact position with the exact timing to make the decision that I made. Like, I still had the opportunity to resign because I was only a sophomore, right? On 9/11. So if you want to know, let me talk about my biography a little bit for people who don't know. It's been a minute since I did, but I grew up in a military family. My mom was very young when she had me. She was 22. And my dad was in the Air Force, and he was very intelligent, very successful, and he became a fighter pilot. He flew the F-4 and the F-15. Now, he was a cold warrior in the fact he never fought in any wars, as far as I'm aware, or he's never told me about fighting in any wars. So he left in 95, the military, and became a airline pilot. But I was getting old. You know, again, my parents had me when they were very young, and it was his second career to become an airline pilot. So I left right as he was starting to like have a good life. So when I was 18, or when I was 17, 9/11 happened. And my dad had just got hired at United Airlines, and he was a first officer for the 757, 767. And he was flying from Denver to New York the morning of 9/11. Which union? The Airline Pilots Association. So on 9/11, I saw United Airlines markings fly directly into the Twin Towers. I knew immediately that it was a United Airlines plane. I recognized the type of aircraft. And for 2 hours, I thought there was a strong possibility that my own dad was dead. Luckily for us, he had landed a little bit before those flights, and he had been driving home when it happened. Unfortunately, one of our family friends was the captain. I'm bringing up the I'm bringing it up. It's flight 175. So Victor was the captain, and he was a family friend of ours. He had just flown with my dad. I want to say it was either the week prior or like 2 or 3 weeks. It was like the previous month. He had been the captain, and my dad had been the co-pilot. So although my dad survived, we did unfortunately experience 9/11 as a very personal thing. Then my dad, had to take a 50% pay cut because United Airlines went bankrupt, and they took away the company from the employees. United used to be the largest employee-owned company, so a lot of the savings of the mechanics. The airline previously had a brief stint as the largest employee-owned company in the United States. So because of 9/11, they took it away from, it declared bankruptcy, and they took it away from the employees. They lost all their savings, or a large portion of their savings, and they took a 50% pay cut. On December 9th, UAL and its subsidiaries filed for Chapter 11 organization. UAA quickly received debtor-in-possession financing to allow it to continue business as usual while it reorganized its debt, capital, and cost structures. It ended with UAL seeking immediate voluntary wage reductions for all employee groups or permission for the bankruptcy court to impose those reductions in order to meet the strict covenants established by the DIP lenders. So they took it away from the employees. So it was a pretty devastating personal situation for my family, We lost our family, a friend. So it felt like a very personal attack. So I got to tell you, I was in favor of the Afghanistan invasion. I was in favor at the time at 17 of getting revenge. That's just the reality. Because when you look into a closed casket funeral for a friend of yours, you probably, you have a little bit of a different feeling. And because of that, as a very successful student, I applied to all the military academies. And I was admitted to West Point, the Naval Academy, and of course, the United States Air Force Academy, which I went into at 18. You know how Tim Pool says how they're racist against white people and you couldn't have gotten into the military academies or whatever? No, I didn't see that. I didn't have that. I didn't have a problem. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Very easy for a white man to get in. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Or was it Charlie Kirk? No, it was Charlie Kirk who said that. Tim Pool dropped out of high school. It was Charlie Kirk who said that. Low Kirk genuinely. So I went into, and so that's what I did. Until sophomore year at the academy, you have to make the decision of whether you're going to commit to the Air Force or not, right? It's a free ride, free college education, but you have to do a 5-year commitment in the military after. And that's when, in the first semester of my sophomore year, the United States decided they wanted to invade Iraq. And I was like, this is dumb as fuck. This isn't getting revenge. Saddam had nothing to do with 9/11. That was not a position I was allowed to have. I'll just tell you, at the time, I was very, very separate from everybody else at the Air Force Academy on my opinion towards the war in Iraq, okay? I said, that's dumb. That's a fucking waste of time. They didn't attack us. We need to get revenge. Not saying that I was some super anti-war guy at this point. And ultimately, I got in trouble for that. And for just generally being kind of an abrasive, confrontational guy on this issue. And back then, I don't know about now, But back then, they used to have what we would call administrative punishments. They would do something called marching tours. I don't know if they still do it. Do they still do it? Oh, here we go. Marching tours are an escalating disciplinary measure at the United States Air Force Academy used to correct minor or moderate conduct infractions. Cadets walk off demerits by monotonously marching in designated areas, such as the terrazzo, wearing full-service dress or gray uniforms while carrying a rifle.
The Air Force Academy, I'm not kidding, it's a year of freaking basic training. And I think it's a miracle that I graduated. I had a really, really hard time after I got through basic training. I think because I was a good kid in high school. I got good grades.
You're like, why are you yelling at me all the time?
That's exactly what it was, and I kind of rebelled. And, you know, if you get in trouble, you get demerits, and you have to march tours. If you get in enough trouble, right, it's this escalating punishment. Once you just get demerits, you can get confined to your room, meaning like you can't go out on the weekend, or you can have to march tours. And marching tours would literally be for a weekend. You put your full service dress on, you grab your M16 rubber ducky, and you have to go march back and forth 1 hour on, 1 hour off, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So if you get like 10 tours, I don't remember exactly what it was now, but that's what you'd have to do. And so all from stupid things that I did, nothing really bad.
So back then we didn't have rubber duckies. We had M14s. I guess I'm older than this guy. So we had M14s, and I had to march. I think I had to march like 80 hours. That's a lot. And so at that point, it was very clear. Now at the academy, that it was very clear that they didn't want anybody who had a different opinion on that. And I said, you know what? Fuck this shit. I don't support this dumb war. I'm fucking out. And I resigned because it was very clear that they were going to try to fuck me more. I had this white racist Southerner supervisor. Let's just explain it that way. And we just did not get along, you know? And I was like, fuck this shit. I don't believe in this shit. I'm quitting. And I quit. And that partially because of my own, like, that's when I really learned for the first time that there were costs to having moral convictions. That it doesn't matter if you are a hard worker, if you're good, it doesn't matter. But if you are butting up against established power on your own, you will get crushed. And you know, for me, I had always been a very successful student, and I had always been able to have a lot of opportunities, a lot of choices. And I went home, and to my surprise, my parents totally supported my decision, right? They were conservative, and they 100% supported my decision. And you know what? I always respected them so much for that. One of the reasons why I have a good relationship with my parents, because they actually understand love, unconditional love, you know? And they may not have agreed with me at that point, but they were there. They supported that decision. Respect. Now, that put my life off track. Because when you go from having a full ride scholarship and you have an imagined like future ahead of you, and you decide to throw off all of that shit for your moral convictions, and then in front of you, there is I had to reimagine my entire life. And so I got a job working on road construction and repair in the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I didn't go to college. I went and did road maintenance on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I had the morning shift, which means I woke up at like 4:30 every morning, and I would drive down one interchange because I wasn't even hired at the closest interchange. I had to drive a full interchange away to work that job. And I was at the bottom of the totem pole. Not exactly the funnest job I ever had. But I learned a lot about physical labor, and I learned a lot about the working class from actually having to exist within it. And I gained a lot of humility, Eventually, I decided to go back to school, and I had a lot of family out in Pittsburgh, so I went out there. And then ultimately, that's when I, went to undergraduate, then I got hired at a law firm, and I realized these guys are dumb as fuck. I could do this. Then I decided to go to law school. Then I went to law school, and I was like, these people are corporate whores. This sucks. Fuck this. I have a tendency to do that. I have a tendency to be like, these people fucking suck. And then trying to build off of that. And that's when I ran for office. And that's when I became left-wing. At about 28, 29, I had enough experiences that I truly crystallized into a left-wing perspective. And that's what I became. That's what I was truly like a progressive person. And I radicalized more. And I kind of like things that I had studied in college or learned before, I consider from fresh eyes in law school, seeing how the systems actually work. I'd say one of the most influential people that I met in law school was my scientific evidence professor, who was a practicing litigator. And we had done work on shaken baby syndrome and how it's probably fake, and how a lot of people would get convicted based off of this like this diagnosis that's not even really well supported by any science. And that things as simple as like a drop or a fall injury could create the same injuries that people say is evidence of shaken baby syndrome. So a lot of especially poor women or poor child caretakers are convicted of shaking their baby based off scientific evidence that's not strong. And there's like a very strong divide. There's a debate on shaken baby syndrome. This is something that kind of got me to start to question a lot of the beliefs that I have about evidence, about, you know, certainty, about the criminal justice system. And then I worked in the securities arbitration, and I kind of like learned about the way our financial system works. And all these different experiences that's what made me, that's why I have so much knowledge in so many areas, because I have done a lot of shit. Okay? I've done a lot of shit in a lot of different areas, and I've gotten lucky in that I've gotten a perspective that is pretty wide, you know? Scientific education, legal education, worked with my hands, got into politics in 2013. I've been working on it since. So that's why I am the way I am, right? Like, that's why I know so much, or whatever people say. Another thing you could do is take an intro college level statistics class, so you can immediately see how facts are made. Oh, of course. Thanks for the 1,000 biddies. In 1971, a British doctor was trying to puzzle out a mystery. How could a child with no signs of external trauma or injury present with bleeding between the skull and brain? That doctor was part of a wave of physicians and researchers newly concerned about an epidemic of severe child abuse that had passing undetected beneath doctors' noses. Prior to the 1960s, medical schools provided little or no training on child abuse, and the medical texts were largely silent on the issue. The turning point was the publication of a 1962 article, The Battered Child Syndrome, which urged physicians to consider that severe child abuse may be at play when children come in with injuries such as bone fractures, subdural hematomas, and bruising. The article goes beyond offering medical advice to prescribing an ethical framework that would take hold. The bias should be in favor of a child's safety. Everything should be done to prevent repeated trauma. And the physician should not be satisfied to return the child to an environment where even a moderate risk of repetition exists. Armed with these new insights, Vigeland hypothesized that the children showing up to his hospital were being abusively shaken. Although they did not show up with the usual visible fractures or forms of physical trauma, the presence of a subdural hematoma could indicate they would come to be widely known as shaken baby syndrome. Decades later, Vigeland would publicly worry that his hypothesis had been taken too far. After reviewing the trial record and medical reports for one case in Arizona, NPR reported that he was troubled that the conclusion was abusive shaking when there were other potential causes. I wouldn't hang a cat on the evidence of shaking as presented, Vigeland quipped. The narrow claim that shaking a baby abusively can result in certain internal injuries morphed into the claim that if a set of internal injuries was present, then shaking must be the cause. On today's episode of Good on Paper, I talk with a neuroscientist who found himself personally embroiled in this scientific and legal controversy when a caretaker was accused of shaking his child. Like, this is something that's like really fucked up that people don't know about, but like, no, shaken baby syndrome is probably not real. Not saying that babies have never been shaken. It's just the syndrome. Looking at a collection of injuries and saying this baby must have been shaken is probably bullshit.
People is like seeing the world through that lens. At the exact same time, though, I was still like a young man in the United States, and I still
back to Graham Plattner.
I was very patriotic, and
me too.
So there was to me, the two things never. You know, I met a lot of guys in the Marine Corps that thought that the war was dumb.
How many gifted for you to shake me?
You know, but they were there because it's a
lot. Like can you try 100 right now? Thank you.
Attraction is more to like the camaraderie and the kind of whole, like, I don't know, the whole like the infantry combat unit thing. It's less about like why you're doing it. In my experience, I never met anybody. I don't have many friends in the Marine Corps who, when we were serving, they're like, yeah, I'm definitely here to like fight for George Bush and do whatever. No, I mean, they're there for like because you joined the infantry. You're there because you were a young, angsty man, and you like joined up and you wanted to go have an adventure and you wanted to fight. I mean, that's what the infantry primarily is.
Can you tell me, with that in mind in your head, that sort of romantic vision of what it was, what you felt when you first arrived in Iraq? Because you were based in what was called then the Sunni Triangle.
Yeah.
Very high conflict area.
Yeah, when we first got there, it wasn't so bad. So January, February, March were pretty mellow. We did the election late January, that first Iraqi election, January of 2005. Somebody shot an RPG at us, but like it didn't go off. And then on April 2nd, 2005, there was a large combined assault, multiple suicide car bombs, an immense amount of indirect fire, rockets, mortars, the whole 9 yards. And that was like my first actual interaction with like combat. The rest of that deployment was fairly mellow. Summer came, a lot of IEDs. We got blown up a bunch. Couple serious incidents with my platoon and took some casualties. But for the most part, it wasn't like continuous. And then that deployment ended August of 2005. We came home for like 4.5, 5 months. I went to machine gun leadership course. And then we promptly went to Ramadi for 2006. And that was like a totally different.
That was the middle of the Civil War.
Yeah. And that was Ramadi in 2006 was the
worst of the worst.
And we were at the government center in downtown Ramadi, and we just lived there. Everybody else came and rotated through, and, journalists would come and the brass would come, and they'd all come down because they all wanted to see the government center because that's like where all the fighting was. And like, we lived there. Like just where 8 months, no days off. Didn't have a single day off for 8 months. It was exhausting. And it was very, very violent. I mean, we just like regular contact almost every day. So.
What do you remember about how you felt being part of that war? Because it's just interesting to me, considering where you came from, to suddenly find yourself as part of an occupying army in the Middle East, no less. I'm just wondering how you sort of made sense of the mission, because you wrote to your mom at the time, "The United States is doing an amazing thing here. It took me coming here to realize that. Don't think we are somewhere we shouldn't be."
Yeah, I mean, I remember in 2005, we were actually engaging in like some building projects. We were helping turn the water back on. We were like, it felt, I was also 20. I was still a kid. So and you need to make all this stuff mean something, right? Like you want to be part of something good. And so as I saw like what seemed like doing good things for a little bit in 2005, I did believe that we were doing something good. Towards the end of the deployment, I started to kind of return to my more cynical kind of state on the whole thing, mostly just because I saw like all the contractors and all we were spending so much money. Like somebody was clearly getting very rich, but it wasn't us. But then, 2006 comes in Ramadi, and I mean, at that point, I became very. I don't even know if I was. Let me rephrase. At the time, I didn't really think about it much. I mean, when you're in it and you're just doing the work, and every day is a slog, and your friends.
You're not reflecting.
No, I mean, you might spend a lot of time being bitter because you haven't slept in 3 days and some colonel just came down and told you that like your boots were dirty. Like there's a lot of being angry at everything, but you're part of your unit. You're around the guys that you love and that you care about, and you're all kind of in it together. And there is a deep sense, I would say, of like camaraderie and community that you get from that.
It's esprit de corps. That's what the term is called. Which, in our society, in our world where people lack a purpose, you could give people that purpose. That's why so many guys have pride or have these kind of emotional connections to their time in service, because they felt like they were part of something greater than themselves. What we on the left have to do is offer people an alternative that's much more attractive.
I certainly got from it.
That period, I imagine, was really hard. Just
looking back on it.
Yeah. And you have been diagnosed with PTSD. You talked about that. When you look back now, when do you think you started to suffer from that? Because I was also diagnosed with PTSD. And for me, I can remember exactly what happened and that caused the sort of cascade. What was it for you?
It was 2006. And it wasn't a specific moment. I'll just be. I think that's not actually true. Fuck.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. In 2005, my vehicle got hit by an IED outside a place called Karma, north of Fallujah, and it was myself and my best friend was in the back of the truck. Another Marine was driving, and we drove over an IED, blew the truck up. We all got knocked unconscious. I come to, whole front of the truck is ripped off. I thought we had engine trouble. I was all like discombobulated. I ran around to the back of the truck, and there's my friend. He's alive, but a piece of shrapnel has like come up under his helmet and ripped a lot of his head off. And I'm 20, and this guy's my best friend. We went to infantry school together. We came to the fleet together. We were thick as thieves, real close. And I just remember, and I was a combat lifesaver. So like I got this training on like how to, but they never told me what to do when you're like looking at brains. And I remember standing there being like, I don't know what the fuck to do. And this is my best friend, and I'm like, and I'm supposed to save him, but I have no idea how to even do that. And then luckily this guy, Doc Huey, spectacular Navy corpsman, comes running up and starts immediately going to work and saves his life. And he survives, but has some pretty significant, it was a significant head wound. And, it happened. I was, of course, distraught because he was my best friend and I'm a kid and, and
it's scary.
It's very scary. And then we also came under there. So all this is happening, and there's also a gunfight going on. So then I got to go get in the gunfight for a while, and we get the vehicle back. We drop him off at the medical station, and then I'm in the back of the truck just cleaning the blood out and mopping it up. And I just remember there was a moment and they were like, well, we got to go back on patrol in 3 hours. And you're just like, yep. So there was a hardening at that point for me where I was like, you don't actually get to do this. You don't get to engage with it, because if you do, you're going to be worthless, and you can't be worthless out here. The whole point of this is to be effective at your job. You're not going to let down your fellow Marines. And I realized looking back on it now, that was because I saw, frankly, worse things after that. There was much more horrific violence. I saw people in far worse physical, far more death, awful stuff. But that was the first time it happened to me. And I think, we got back from that deployment, and, with the young Marines, we all drink a lot. We all party a lot. High risk behavior is pretty standard for young Marines. But when I got back from my Ramadi deployment in 2006, in between my second and third deployments, that was when I know that I was absolutely self-medicating and drinking heavily, really not wanting to engage with feelings and emotions, becoming very emotionally distant. I had a girlfriend. The relationship totally fell apart because I was just a wreck of a human being. Sadly, that kind of remained sort of the case for a while. After that, not being a very emotionally connected human being. And but I think it all starts back then.
You end up serving quite a few more tours. You go to Afghanistan, and then in 2018 you go as a military contractor to Afghanistan.
Yeah, for 6 months. Didn't last very long.
How had your views at that point evolved from that first letter that you wrote home to your mom to then? It's entirely. They had changed into something else entirely different. When I went back in 2018, I didn't believe in any of it. I went back in 2018 because I was broke and lost, and I had no idea what to do with myself and my skills. Because all I'd ever really done was carry guns for a living. And my friend of mine was just like, hey man, I'm on a contract at Kabul. We don't do anything. All we do is lift weights. The ambassador doesn't really go anywhere, so we don't really have to do much driving around. He's like, the pay's pretty good. It's not bad. So I went over for 6 months, and at that point, whatever disillusionment was became something much deeper, because then I'm in Kabul and I'm seeing it I'm at the embassy and seeing it from the high side. And I was like, oh my God, 7 years I haven't been in this country and no new ideas.
And we're out there dropping bombs on people's houses. There are special operations units kicking in people's doors in the middle of the night. It's all the violence is still happening, and nobody down here has an inkling of what to do or what we're even attempting to do. And so I quit, moved back to Sullivan, bought a 19-foot Seaway skiff, started farming oysters, and decided I never wanted to look back. And I wanted to get as far away from all of it as humanly possible.
When you look back at that, do you feel angry that you were part of that violence? Do you feel, do you regret that you were part of that violence?
I have a complicated relationship with it because I am still proud of being a Marine. I'm still, and I am very proud of like my service and the service of the guys that fought next to me. I mean, we tried our best. We truly did. But it doesn't matter if you try your best inside of a flawed policy and a flawed system. It's flawed from the top down.
This is what he did, chat. Obama administration keeping Blackwater armed and dangerous in Afghanistan. Indictments, investigations, and scandals have not stopped the State Department from giving Blackwater another $120 million contract for diplomatic security in Afghanistan. So he was basically hired by Barack Obama to be a bodyguard for diplomats in Afghanistan. Okay? Like, that's what he did. And he said he was there for 6 months, was even more disillusioned, and then went home and quit. And so, like, I don't think really you can look at that situation and be like, hey, the guy doesn't believe in that and wants to stop it, and there's no one who knows it better than him, who's actually inside to see how ineffective that is, and be like, it's like when people curse out whistleblowers, right? Like, a whistleblower comes out and says that America is violating, the law and giving weapons to Israel. And people were like freaking out about how they're an evil shill. And I'm like, that's a whistleblower. That's a whistleblower. That is somebody who has seen it and is coming out to help support our position. You need to give those people, those are the people that you want. You want people to betray the other side. You want them to come out and say that shit's bad. And people want to, the thing about the Graham Plattner stuff is like, they want to reward the guys who created the wars. Graham Plattner is saying, though, I learned from being in the wars that the wars are bad and I'm anti-war. And the people that are attacking him want you to elect pro-war, demented Susan Collins. That is the result, which will lead to what? 1,000 more, 100,000 more Graham Plattners. And the inability to like weigh and measure and like acknowledge reality and acknowledge that politics has consequences is fucking weird. And I'm sorry, I watch this guy and I don't see a bloodthirsty murderer. I don't see a guy who wants to kill more people in the Middle East. In fact, I see a guy who's deeply troubled by his past, has complicated feelings about it, and wants to not do that shit anymore.
It's bound to fail. It's bound to bring an immense amount of violence upon people who in no way, shape, or form are deserving it.
I agree it would be better to get a guy who was never working for Blackwater. I don't even feel like that. Like, I hear that argument, and I gotta tell you, it makes me disrespect the people that make it. I gotta be honest with you. I really respect you less when you say that shit, because that's not how the world works. You don't get to fantasize about a mystery person it's like somebody who doesn't date because they have an imaginary partner in their mind that they're going to find one day. Graham Plattner is the choice. It is, do you want an anti-war, anti-Zionist, pro-Medicare for all, progressive, or do you want Susan Collins, Donald Trump's puppet and warmonger and Zionist? That's the choice. Stop fantasizing about your ideal match. Now, we have ideal candidates. I brought her on my fucking stream last Wednesday. Claire Valdez. She exists. I brought her on stream. We raised $50,000 for her. I'm glad I was able to give her more attention. She doesn't get enough. But ask yourself, the people that are criticizing Graham Plattner, have they done anything for Claire? Have they done anything to promote Claire? A union organizer, anti-imperialist foreign policy. Have they done a goddamn thing for her? Have they promoted her? Have they given her money? Have they done anything? Or are they on their 80th Graham Plattner tweet or video? What are they doing constructively to attract that generation of perfect candidates? Because I have one for you. What are you doing to help her? What the fuck are you doing to help her?
Of it, because we destroyed Iraq and we destroyed Afghanistan, and all the suffering, all the killing, all the dying, all the displacement, all of it we brought that. We, the United States, did that. And it is a...
Let's start
and
that
that
again.
I'm ashamed of. And...
When you look back at that, do you feel angry that you were part of that violence? Do you feel, do you regret that you were part of that violence?
I have a complicated relationship with it because I am still proud of being a Marine. I'm still, and I am very proud of like my service and the service of the guys that fought next to me. I mean, we tried our best. We truly did. But it doesn't matter if you try your best inside of a flawed policy and a flawed system. It's flawed from the top down. It's bound to fail. It's bound to bring an immense amount of violence upon people who in no way, shape, or form are deserving of it. Because, I mean, we destroyed Iraq and we destroyed Afghanistan. And all the suffering, all the killing, all the dying, all the displacement, all of it we brought that. We, the United States, did that. And it is and that I'm ashamed of. The anger that I feel is for the people that sent me, who are, frankly, still the same people who are sending people off right now to go be in harm's way so we can start and have this stupid war with Iran. I mean, Susan Collins voted to send me to Iraq, and she's also there to help Donald Trump continue this absolutely insane conflict in the Straits of Hormuz. So it's the same people, and that is like, if I have any anger, it is reserved for like the political system itself and the people in it who view war not as like a thing that has a human toll, but they view war as like a political game, something that they can use.
Do you see yourself as anti-war now? Not the war with Iran, but just...
Yes, in general, absolutely.
In general.
Yeah, I do. I'm not a pacifist, but I am essentially anti-war. And I think the way that we, the United States, wages war, I mean, really I'm pretty critical of most of our military engagements. I fail to see many that made lives better here for Americans. There are a lot of examples of it being good for multinational business interests. There are a lot of examples of it being good for people in places of political power. Rarely good for the people who have to go fight and die, and rarely good for like the American people who have to pay for this nonsense and deal with the repercussions of it. Meanwhile, Raytheon executives get a yacht. People make a lot of money off of this thing.
It's interesting hearing you.
Guys, are you sure you want to get excited for this guy? Yeah, he's winning 95% white Maine, but are you sure? Are you sure? We could have Susan Collins to vote for another fascist Supreme Court judge and another war in Iran or Yemen or Nigeria they just bombed. Are you sure? Can you imagine a better candidate in your mind? You should wait for that candidate.
Talk like that. I mean, there are some on the right who have very similar views.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you think about that? Do you think that there's like a natural alliance there, perhaps, or is there...
I don't know if there's an alliance. But I think it's just a reflection of the fact that it's hard not to come to that conclusion these days. I mean, the forever wars that we have been in now, really since 2001. I mean, what good has it done us? Your politics do not have to remotely align with mine to still like see that very clear reality, which is, I think, what we're seeing.
I want to come back to something that we mentioned at the top, which is something else that happened during your time in the Middle East. And that is, of course, that you got a tattoo.
Well, that was in Croatia.
That was in Croatia, but it was during this period then when you were serving.
2007.
Right.
Or 8.
And it resembles Nazi insignia.
Yeah, it's a skull and crossbones. I got a skull and crossbones with a bunch of other Marines in a tattoo parlor in Croatia because skull and crossbones are things that Marines get. And I had it for 17 years. And I took my shirt off. I was out in public. I took pictures with it. I went through 2 security clearances where I got screened for gang and hate tattoos, and it never once came up on a screening. So that's what I had a skull and crossbones on my chest for 17 years until after the campaign started, and then the establishment candidate got in the race, and suddenly they drop all this opposition research, and part of it is that Graham Plattner has like this like tattoo with white supremacist ties or Nazi ties. And at that point, I took a look at the things. I'm like, well, I don't want something that has that kind of connotation on my body, and so I promptly got it covered up.
Yeah. Did other people get the same tattoo?
Yeah. Other guys in my unit. Yeah.
I mean, you say it's opposition research. That may well be true, but ultimately it is hard for voters to know what the reality of why you got that is?
It doesn't seem to be the case for people in Maine. I mean, I've talked about this ad nauseum, and
I mean, have you made outreach to Jewish voters?
Oh, of course,
and
I mean,
how have they responded?
Half of my family is Jewish. In fact, the video in which the tattoo was displayed, which was the video that was shared around, was at my brother's wedding to my Jewish sister-in-law with her whole extended Jewish family, where I was taking my shirt off and dancing. If I had thought I had something that was this obvious, like, anti-Semitic thing, I would not have done that, because that would be utterly insane. Yeah, no, we do a lot of, and I mean, to be honest, like I have a lot of close supporters who are in the Jewish community in Maine, primarily because I've been close with people in the Jewish community in Maine my entire life.
Does it make you concerned about who you engage with? Because, you know, obviously this issue is very sensitive for many voters. As you know, I recently interviewed Tucker Carlson. He told me he was interested in meeting you.
I saw that. I've been hearing about it ever since.
I mean, you told independent journalist David Serrata that you're weighing talking to him.
Yep.
I mean, what are you weighing? Do you think Tucker Carlson's an anti-Semite? Are you worried that by going on to his show, because this is still part of the conversation, that this could lend itself to?
Oh, I'm not worried about that part. I mean,
people tagging you with the way that they might view him.
I'm not an anti-Semite.
Listen, I knew what it was, but I'm a fucking super nerd. All right, I've actually studied Nazi Germany. I know who the Dirkweiler Brigade is. I know about the SS. I've studied this shit at a super deep level. I've studied the fucking Eastern Front. I could tell you all sorts of symbols nobody else would know, right? Like, so for me, I was like, what the fuck's wrong with you, you fucking idiot? And it pissed me off quite a bit, because stupidity pisses me off. I'll be honest with you. But at a certain point, we've looked into this guy. There is no evidence whatsoever of anti-Semitism or Jew hate. There's just none, okay? There just isn't. And he got the tattoo covered up. I mean, at the end of the day, what the fuck are we supposed to say here? Yes, it's bad optics. Yes, he's a dumb piece of shit for getting that tattoo and not knowing what it was. But at the end of the day, what do you want me to do? Whip him to death?
Tagging you with the way that they might view him.
I'm not an anti-Semite. I never have been. I've been very dedicated, actually.
Do you think Tucker Carlson's an anti-Semite?
I do not know enough about the man to know. But I will say I am not a fan of his form of, like, right-wing kind of, there's a lot of, like, I think unhealthy nationalism and xenophobia in there. And that's, I don't think, a helpful thing.
To be fair, you're not allowed to get a non-Nazi
what I'm weighing is the fact that I often talk about on the campaign trail, I do think it's necessary to have conversations with people we disagree with, especially these days. I think if we always just stay in these kind of ideologically pure spaces, we're just never going to talk to anybody. And I firmly believe in the need to find common ground and to rebuild like communities and relationships in which the average person actually has like almost everything in common when it comes to material needs. But at the exact same time, I say that I also don't want to elevate hateful or I mean, frankly, any kind of thing that I personally view as being dangerous, and that's a tough needle to thread. It's because especially with somebody like Carlson who has such a huge reach. I mean, I'll be very honest. A lot of the guys I served with, big Tucker Carlson fans, and I want to be able to engage those kind of people with my kind of politics and my answer on these things, that it isn't.
Did you miss the commentary on Mallory's interview? I did it yesterday. So you can go check the VOD from yesterday. I'm not a Maine voter, so what I think doesn't matter. I voted for Cabo despite thinking she was dog shit, so I would vote for this guy even if I was presented with the choice. Doesn't mean I don't reserve judgment till see how he acts in the Senate. Okay, here's how I react to that. Like, I hear you guys. Here's my position. I'm helping every anti-Zionist I can. All right? If you're an anti-Zionist, I'm helping you. Okay? Grant Plattner is an anti-Zionist. Grant Plattner is anti-war. I'm helping him. He's got a lot of good policies, and he's left-wing. He's on the left wing of American politics, and he is running in a purple state. I'm helping him. I'm supporting him. Why? Because I want to be able to say left-wing candidates do well in swing states. Left-wing candidates can flip districts. I want to have that argument in the fucking quiver, and he'll be a prominent left-winger that we can use that argument for. All right? That's what we're doing here. Okay? If you want to hang back and work on a different campaign, you only have so much time. I get it. I pick and choose who I'm helping too, right? It's very important that SKYROCKET defeat Nancy Pelosi endorsed Connie Chan. That is important. It's important that Nancy Pelosi is disempowered in Congress. We need to defeat her candidate. See what I mean? Did I say SKYROCKET wrong again? It's SKYROCKET. Okay, you get my part. You get it. You get it. I'll keep pronouncing his name wrong forever. SKYROCKET.
Immigrants who you need to be afraid of. It's and that's not why your life is hard.
So that's a yes. You would go, I guess.
It's oh no, I still do not know. I'll be honest. I have not. I bounce back and forth on this one all the time.
I also want to bring up something else. There are controversial statements also on social media. You posted over 1,800 comments under the username phustle from 2009 to November 2021, and some of them are objectively concerning. You said rural Mainers are racist and stupid. You said that sexual assault victims should take responsibility for themselves. This all came out in the national press.
Yeah.
Why didn't you disclose this stuff first?
Oh, I mean, we did. We released all of the comments. I mean, when people came to us, they're like, "Oh, we've got a couple little ones," and we were like, "I mean, there's a lot more than a couple." So we just put everything out there.
You did delete them though before the campaign launched.
I deleted them a while ago. I haven't used Reddit in I think since 2021, and I'll be honest, I don't actually know when I did delete everything.
So it wasn't because you were going to run?
No. I stopped using the internet. I mean, I stopped using the internet because I got happy. I mean, I sat on the internet for a number of years, getting in fights. Quite frankly, in the parlance of the times, shitposting, trying to get a rise out of people, trying to get in arguments because it, brought me some form of, I don't know, like serotonin boost or something. Because truthfully, I was really, really isolated and alone, very angry. And a lot of the worst comments definitely come from the years where I was at my absolute worst, which really is between 2012 and 2017. 2018 is when I was actually in a pretty dark place, all in all.
I just want to clarify something about the Reddit comments. Can you walk me through the timeline again?
Yeah.
So you decided you were going to run. Did you worry about those old comments immediately? I mean, when exactly did you delete them? When did you decide to release the others?
Well, we just put everything out because it was, the Wayback Machine, I think is what got used. Right after we got contacted by, I think it was CNN, who was the first outlet that reached out to us because they'd found some, and we were like, there are more, because they're out. I mean, I'm an elder millennial. I grew up on the internet. I am well aware that everything you post on the internet is there forever. It's not like it's not a thing I don't know.
So you deleted them in 2021, 2022? Is that?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't.
But well before you were considering running for office?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I'm trying to think of, because I deleted my Reddit profile because I just stopped using Reddit. So I don't know actually when I did that because I hadn't used Reddit since I think 21. So somewhere in those 5 years between 21 and 2026.
Did the people who recruited
guys? When did you delete your Reddit posts? Guys, when did you delete your Reddit posts? This is what we have degraded. We went from him talking about his PTSD because of and his support for anti-war policies to when did you delete your Reddit posts?
Did you disclose it to them that this was there?
Oh yeah, I was like, look, we talked about everything that I could have ever, because this is how politics is now. Even though I'll be honest, I think it's a pretty ridiculous way of conducting politics, but this is how politics is. So you have to go through everything you've ever done that could be portrayed as a bad thing, and one of the first questions was, do you have social media posts? I'm like, oh yeah, man. I spent 18 years 12 years on Reddit, and made a whole bunch of comments because I did.
Why do I have immaculate instincts, chat? Why do I have immaculate, perfect instincts? Why am I never wrong? Why am I the best political analysis on the fucking internet? Why is my ego perfectly sized and not at all egomaniacal? You may be going, Mike, why are you saying that? Just get your Mike was rights going. Just get it going. Just get it going. Just get your Mike was rights going. I'll show you once you all post it. Just post your Mike was rights. Honored to have Rashida Tlaib's endorsement from day one. She's been a fearless voice of moral clarity, even when it costs her something to speak. In Michigan, she took on the corporations poisoning her district and won. In Congress, her fight for Palestinian rights has shifted the discourse in America. I don't remember what he says, but boycott. Oh, yeah. Oh. Stuff that in your pipe and smoke it. Stuff that in your pipe and smoke it. Mike was right again. Mike was right again. Calm down. This is fucking amazing. I love it. Immaculate. Immaculate vibes. Immaculate.
Can I ask you about something else? You wrote in 2018 about armed resistance to fascism. You said, quote, an armed working class is a requirement for economic justice.
How do you not like this guy? Come on. Based. Come on. Come on.
How do you think about that now?
As a student of history, it is difficult for me to not see elements of that as being like a reality, especially in resistance to fascism. We didn't beat the Nazis with smiles. We did beat them with a war. I don't think it's a very controversial statement, to tell you the truth.
I mean, I guess in the context of political violence, some might see it as worrying.
Well, to be fair, I was talking about it as a private citizen with no visibility, and mostly just talking about what I thought was a very clear historical reality, which I would say it's still true. I mean, historically, fascism has been beaten with armed resistance and conflict. I mean, World War II was mostly us and the Russians and using,
Do you think there needs to be armed resistance in this country?
No, good Lord, no. The way that we use the term political violence right now in our kind of current discourse, violence has absolutely no place. And I don't think it moves us any closer to a better or freer society. That's what I think the organizing's for, if I'm going to be upfront. I mean, I think one of the reasons we actually see an explosion of political violence today is because we do not have more effective outlets. Like, there are people who want to see change. They want to see, and, especially for folks who are kind of either ideologically more or just mentally more attracted to using violence, that when there is no other outlet, when there is no healthy place to put...
Oh, that reminds me, chat. Oliver Larkin, Vio is organizing a Monopoly. We're getting together and playing Monopoly, the most boomer-ass game, which I love. Oliver Larkin, Vio, Sad Girl, Denims, Maple Takes, and Swift Tour. We are all getting together May 21st to play some Monopoly on a live stream, gaming live stream. I'm gonna fucking win. I have all the Monopoly strats on lock. I'm gonna win because I have all the Monopoly strats on lock. They're fucking cooked.
That energy. I do think you see an explosion of violence, which is kind of what we're seeing right now. A lot of people are angry about the system. People are angry about the state of things, but there isn't like a very clear and healthy way to use it. And I think that's one of the reasons why organizing at the community level is paramount for the future of our political system. 2017, my mom and I went down to the Women's March in DC. And I remember going there and being like, oh my God, look at all these people. Like, we're clearly gonna resist. We're gonna fight back.
The pussy hats.
Nothing happened because it was just mobilization. Mobilization's a tactic. Turning people out into the streets, protests, that's part of it. But it needs to be deeper. And I think one of the problems is that we haven't had that in quite some time, outside the labor movement and certain organizations and the civil rights groups. And they've kept the flame alive. But I think right now, that's the work we need to be doing, is tying into those skills and those legacies of organizing and expanding them to everybody else, to give a lot of people who are feeling hopeless and angry a place to come in and a place to put that frustration, that anger to positive use, working with their neighbors, building trust, building relationships at the community level. I think that's, without question, that is the only way we're going to effectively resist the Trump administration, but also the only way we're going to effectively build power to, I think, rebuild the American political system to be more representative of the average American.
And the way you've discussed this is revolutionary. You have talked about wanting to completely break the system as it works now.
We need a political revolution in this country. I mean, Bernie said it in 2016. He was right then. He remains right today. I mean, I think structurally, our political system at this point, whether it's money, whether it's the way that our democratic systems have been kind of subsumed by corporate power, we need to change the structures of how this thing works.
We're going to talk again, and I'm interested in how you think about wielding power, because you've talked a lot about your theory of power and, you know, what should happen once you have it. But that shall be for another time.
Okay.
Graham Plattner, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today.
Of course. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's great being here.
On the interview, we speak to our guest twice. So a few days later,
new polling shows young people went from seeing China as the enemy to a year ago to a friend now. Within the past year, 18 to 29-year-olds went from seeing China as a clear enemy to a friend. Do you consider China to be an ally or an enemy of the United States? China maxing in. All right, everybody, I'm going to call it there. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to send y'all over to Vio, who is live streaming. And because we are doing the Monopoly game with Oliver Larkin, no second part of the interview. Oh, no, I got to take off. I want you guys to go over to Vio now. Thank you so much for all the support. You guys are the best. We ended the end of the stream with 6,344 subs. So we're climbing back to 7,000, which is the monthly goal. We're going to make it. I believe in you, chat. Thank you so much for supporting the stream. We are winning. Shortcut getting the Rashida Tlaib endorsement. What more can you say, baby? Woo! And I don't like, you know, listen. If you're from San Francisco, I just want you to know something. I was right. And the reason you should ask yourself, why was I right? And the answer is because I'm looking at politics from an international lens. Who are people aligning themselves? That identifies what they're going to do in office and who's going to challenge the Democratic Party of establishment. And that is why I care. All right, everybody, there's all my links. Don't forget, new reaction podcast on Stefan Molyneux. I'll see you tomorrow. Free Palestine.